смелый, белую ночь, час, когда я усну, приснится мне сон удивительно белый.
All right, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Welcome to another We've Read the Documents live stream. I'm your host, John Brisson. Here with me, as always, I have my research partner and fellow brother in Christ, S90. S90, are you there?
I am here. How is everybody?
Good. Hope everybody's doing well out there. This is a collaboration between the two of us on Aleksandr Dugin, exposing Aleksandr Dugin, the evil Satanist that he is. And look, even if you don't believe in God the Father and Jesus Christ, which you should, but it's not hard to see, especially when we go through the numerous clips. And I present to you what I have from Aleksandr Dugin's newest book, The Great Reset versus The Great Awakening. That Aleksandr Dugin, especially if you're an American or if you're a European, Dugin, especially if you're Christian, and especially if you're Caucasian, Dugin despises and hates you. He wants America to fall. Now, yes, I believe that America, like most countries out there, does need to pay for the numerous crimes and sins that our country has committed. However, it is up to God to punish our nation, as I believe is happening right now. Chastisement to get us to turn to him. Unlike what Dugin wants, which is a worldly crush destruction of the West, of the United States of America, of Europe. And look, as an American, I want America to be a powerful nation. I want it to be a first world country. There are some perks going along with that. Like, if I'm choosing between the United States of America and Russia, I'm going to choose the USA. All right? This is my country. Yes, I'm a Christian first and American second. But, you know, look, Dugin's wrong, okay? He's wrong a lot. And again, I've made this known. I despise both Bannon and Dugin. And at times I go back and forth of whether they're best buds forever or whether they're tentative allies or whether they now despise each other. I mean, you can read Tenenbaum's book, The War on Eternity, and it seems like they've had a falling out. Dugin praises Bannon in The Great Reset versus The Great Awakening. However, I will say this. If I had to choose, and yes, choosing the lesser of the two evils is still evil, I think a tiny little percent of Stephen K. Bannon's dead black heart, okay, heart size is so small like the Grinch, 1%, 0.5%, however you want to say, of Bannon, he does genuinely, mildly care about the United States of America over China and Russia, okay? And look, I'm not saying Bannon's our guy. I've done numerous videos to expose him. I will continue to do numerous videos to expose him. But between Bannon, who is an occultist and a Satanist, and Dugin, who's an occultist and a Satanist, at least Bannon cares a tiny, tiny, tiny minuscule amount about this country somewhere compared to Aleksandr Dugin. They're both horrible and reprehensible people, and they will have to answer to God. Hopefully they repent before they die, okay? So don't, by me saying that, don't be like, oh, John's out there saying, platform boosting Stephen K. Bannon. I am not. And I'm not saying we even have to choose. I'm just saying this is what is presented to us. Okay? Thoughts S90, am I completely wrong? Have I gone, am I going to get comment sections of how I love Stephen K. Bannon, and I'm turned it into Brendan O'Connell? Am I missing something? All right.
The only thing you're missing, comrade, is that modernity is the Antichrist. You need to understand this.
Well, hi, Dugin. It's nice to meet you. I guess it's not nice to meet you. You can go away from me. Get behind me, Satan!
Yes.
But, I mean, Dugin is the modern-day Rasputin, right? I mean, he glorifies the deaths of the white Christian czars. Not saying the czars were, perfect saints in and of themselves, no, but they were, they represented the old world order of Russia, and they were, eliminated by the Bolshevik Revolution. And, of course, the Bolshevik Revolution birthed USSR, the Soviet Communist Russia, and under Stalin, killed tens of millions of people, 50 million, 60 million, maybe not as much as Mao, but close to it. And Stalin killed numerous millions of Christians around the world. He was a horrific, horrible person and a antichrist with a little a. So out of the czars, who were not perfect in themselves, well, at least Russia represented a Christian nation, Christian in quotation marks. And out of that came much death, much martyrdom. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, Dugin loves that. He thrives off of that. He even writes about it, of how the Bolsheviks bucked against the world order in the Great Reset versus the Great Awakening, and we're going to get to that, okay?
Yeah,
that is evil. That's evil.
He thrives on conflict because while other people are fighting with one another, he's trying to get a hand up on both of them. And it's interesting that you used the phrase "old order" when referring to the czars and what came before, because that, in looking at everything that this guy has done, at the end I'll bring that back up, but that term itself, old order, is quite revealing when it comes to Dugin, because I think what he pins the blame on for everything. He pins all the blame for everything wrong with the entire world on one particular thing. And I think that it's funny because when I see him doing this, it reminds me of things I'd thought of before, where I thought maybe this is kind of where history had its split, and where this and he's sort of confirming that to me by pinning the blame on that one thing that happened 500 years ago. And so I think old order is the proper way to describe Dugin. He would prefer a older way of doing things, shall we say.
Well, on the surface, he claims that he prefers traditionalism, but in reality, he's for the New World Order, the divine right of man over the divine right of kings. Okay? And look, you had good kings and you had bad kings. You had kings that followed God's laws and turned to God, and kings who did not. And yes, royal families became corrupted more over time as the more power and worldly things that they got. In the Bible, you see that there were very, very few godly kings, and most kings were corrupt and, horrible, and served Satan and their own lusts and desires. So, but it was, at least, when you had the royal family, when you had the king, you had one person what the country was you could blame. You had one person that that it rested on his shoulders. The country rested on his or her, if it was a queen, shoulders. Where in modern time, the divine right of man, the rule of man. And you could argue it started with the American Revolution and the French Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution, and blah 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 blah. You now get a Congress, you get a parliament, you get a diet, and you have multiple people that are now to blame for government. And then you could, if voting's not real, it's an illusion, but if you take voting to be true, then it's the people that put those people in power. It's their fault, okay? So then you have millions of people where it's their fault, and millions of people where you can point to and look to. So it's kind of like, that's the reason why I believe that God set it up for us to have kings, as flawed as they could be. That was the old world order. That was the way things were under God. And now it's not like that anymore in numerous countries. And Dugin, though he claims to be a traditionalist, okay, though he claims, that modern way of thinking and modern technology is evil, and yes, there's a lot of truth to that. Yet at the same time, he totally pushes for the divine right of man. And upholds the Bolsheviks. It's like, how can you uphold the Bolsheviks? I mean, Mateo mentioned in the chat, the Holodomor, the Ukrainian starvation forced by the Soviets. That was a mass genocide. So everybody always likes to come at me as a Christian by the Crusades and Inquisition, but look about how many people died from godless communism, like with Stalin, for example. That's in the millions. And yes, I'm not excusing the ills and evils of Christians or the church. Granted, you could say, well, it's the Roman Catholic Church, the Roman pagan Catholic Church that did it, and yes, that is true. But there were probably some Christians within those churches that did horrific things because they were commanded to do so. And so it's extremely complicated. It's not just one. With most of these, what would you say? Call them S90. Most of these.
Well, I was going to say that ultimately, I think what he seeks to revise modernity itself and impose, as he puts it, a fourth way of doing things on top of it. He doesn't want to get rid of technology or return to, serfs in the field, but almost like he wants to synthesize many different things into one. And at first, that's kind of the first thing that I wanted to bring up was this article from Anton Chekhovstov that Cooper sent to me a while ago called The Palingenic Thrust of Russian Neo-Eurasianism. And it starts with a quote here, and it says, "You are famed for being able to burn a rose to ashes and make it emerge again by the magic of your art. Let me witness that prodigy. I ask that of you, and in return I will offer up my entire life." It says, the phrase cited is in the epigraph to an article from Johannes Grisbach, a doubting would-be disciple of Paracelsus, who asked for a miracle in order to believe in the great magical powers of alchemy. It basically is where you would burn a flower, and it says here, by calcination, disengage the salts from the ashes, deposit them in a glass vial. A chemical mixture acts upon it until fermentation occurs, and then they assume a bluish and spectral hue. The dust, thus excited by the heat, shoots upwards into the primitive forms. By sympathy, the parts unite. While each is returned to its destined place, we see distinctly the stalks, the leaves, and the flower arise, the pale specter of the flower coming forth from its ashes. And ultimately, this is what he wants, I think, is to revise modernity and take different parts from the old world and mesh them with what we have now into something brand new, including religion, including the state, including the place of man in the world. And we'll see his religious proclivities, I think, in the third clip. So I don't know.
You gotta be able to hold multiple stances, multiple beliefs, multiple ideologies to some degree.
Yeah. It's almost cognitive dissonance is necessary in order to follow this guy.
Yeah, but I mean, in general, I meant like it's so complex between Dugin and Bannon and what Dugin says, but what he really means and what he shows. And it's like, it's very complex. And I'm not saying that me and S90 completely have our heads wrapped around it. All right. I don't. But we're going to try. Okay.
I got a pretty good picture watching all these clips. That's for sure.
Oswald Spengler in his chat mentions the American left would be thrilled to know that Dugin is woke now, if they even know who he is. It's very true. It's very true. So let's start with the clips. Let's start with the clips.
Yes. So this is a Freedom Alternative. He's got an 1.5-hour video that I condensed down into about 20 minutes worth of clips. Let's just see what he has to say.
Which, by the way, Jesse Spots has an excellent video, Dugin, on his Libby channel. I will link it in the show notes to go watch. It's longer, and I'd have enough time to break it up into clips myself. But let's begin. Let's start.
Most videos about Dugin are hours long.
Yeah, this video is going to be hours. So, and anyone's welcome to rip it off my channel or any of my videos and share them and break them down into clips. You can even provide commentary, whether you agree with me or not. I'm not going to flag anybody for it, even if you say mean things about me. That's what fair use is for. So, all right, let's go.
Duginism is to the right what cultural Marxism is to the left, only a lot worse. A lot worse because we've come to witness also the rise of the Duginist left lately, such as the Coalition of the Radical Left, or Syriza, in Greece. Sadly, the establishmentarian right and the establishmentarian left have done very, very little to combat Duginism, partly because they don't know what it is, and partly because they're just too hysterical and thus incapable of understanding what they're really up against. So, in this episode, we will try our best to understand what Duginism is, how it works in practice, and why it matters. Sadly, Duginism is less and less fringe, not because Duginism is correct or a fair alternative to the failures of liberalism, but because Duginism is vague enough to attract disgruntled totalitarians of every stripe. Add to that the never-ending chain of stupidity of mainstream politicians like François Hollande, Angela Merkel, Federica Mogherini, Stefan Löfven, and others like that, and it's getting increasingly easier to see why Duginism is taking roots once you understand what Duginism is, especially once you also take into account the inherent anti-Americanism that is widely practiced in all too many intellectual circles in Europe. The beauty of Duginism and its inherently chameleonic nature, and I mean it when I say the beauty, because whilst I utterly loathe Duginism and I loathe the fact that it even has any type of influence, I do have to admire the simple yet highly efficient agitprop conducted by its followers. Aleksandr Dugin, professor of political science at the Moscow State University and the de facto ideologue of the Kremlin in the last 5 or 6 years, depending on which source do you trust. Now, Dugin wrote roughly 3 dozens of books and hundreds, if not thousands, of articles. Now, I read 3 of the books and maybe 100 or so of his articles. By the way, he also makes videos on YouTube, and his videos are a lot more interesting if you speak Russian, because then you have the chance of watching his videos in Russian and then those in English. And such a marathon actually provides a very insightful experience into how chameleonic this guy's ideology actually is, and also explains quite a lot on why he has so many useful idiots for his ideological views. In short, what he says in English is not what he says in Russian. So the key works in
Any thoughts so far?
Yeah, and that seems to be the key. Is he knows quite a few languages. This guy is, I mean, you know, I gotta respect his intellectual prowess, right? And like the guy said, he's very good at what he does. Like, I'm not just gonna say, oh, he's just an idiot. Well, you know, he's clearly not. He knows what he's doing, and he knows how to play his audience, right? Like, this is like what this guy's saying is how you've got the Duginist right, you've got the Duginist left. What he says in English is not necessarily what he says in Russian, you know. And I've got clips that sort of will expand on this a bit, and ultimately it breaks down to how do I put it? Ultimately it seems like it's mainly focused on anti-Americanism. Ultimately.
Yeah, very much so.
For what it's worth.
As it will.
Yeah.
Anti-West, anti-Christian, anti-Caucasian.
But he'll play any tune required to get someone to dance.
And I mean, really, anti any race that that lives or allies themselves in the European, American, Canadian, the quote unquote Atlantean power nations.
It's what he calls the Atlanticist alliance, or the Atlanticist ideology of sort of the Atlantic Ocean, the 1700s, the 1800s, the British Navy, the colonization via the Atlantic Ocean. And he's saying that it's shifting basically from that British template kind of into something else. And to say that he yes, he changes his opinion to match who he's talking to, but he very clearly has, like, it may make him sound wishy-washy and like he doesn't actually believe in anything, but I think as we go on, we'll see that's definitely not the case. He definitely has something that he believes at its core. He just knows when to say it and when not.
He believes in an Asiatic Russia. Pretty much anybody who's not Asiatic Russian, he is racist towards.
Pretty much.
And I don't throw that term around loosely. Like, you're going to see evidence of that. All right, let's go.
The key works in understanding Duginism or Eurasianism and Continentalism, whatever, are these 2 books. Основы геополитики, геополитическое будущее России, or The Foundations of Geopolitics, the Geopolitical Future of Russia, and Четвертая политическая теория, or The Fourth Political Theory. Now, the first book is basically Dugin's argument as to why Russia has the right to invade and dominate most of Europe, and then after he's done explaining that, he proceeds to basically expand on Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky and lay out a very detailed plan on how to achieve Russian dominance. Now, mind you, the logic is not to have Russia everywhere, but rather to have as many countries as possible play by the music of Russia.
And that's a key as
Now, this
well.
book,
That I think
all the way
one of his key powers is that he knows you can't exert influence over large swaths of land forever. And so instead, and this plays into, like I said, the chameleonic nature, the speaking of multiple languages and changing his message based on who he's talking to. He simply knows how to play the song that gets people to dance in the way he wants. And we'll see that later with the countries he's working on, or at least that Russia's working on, possibly at his, at his suggestion pretty quickly here.
Back in 1997, lays out a very detailed plan of Russian subversion to be developed not just in Europe but also in the United States, China, the Caucasus area, Japan, and so on and so forth. And some of the objectives of Duginist subversion have already been achieved, or may indeed be achieved, sooner than many would dare to think. Let me read a few passages from page 367 from the Foundations of Geopolitics by Aleksandr Dugin. Quote, "All levels of geopolitical pressure must be activated simultaneously. It is especially important to introduce geopolitical disorder into internal American activity, encouraging all kinds of separatism and ethnic, social, and racial conflicts, actively supporting all dissident movements, extremist, racist, and sectarian groups, thus destabilizing internal political process in the United States. It would also make sense simultaneously to support isolationist tendencies in American politics." Now, on page 248, the same book, Dugin writes, quote, "It is important to provoke all forms of instability and separatism within the borders of the United States. It is possible to make use of the political forces of Afro-American racists," close quote. Now, are you scared yet? Because there's more, as in a lot more. Page 216, on the construction of the Eurasian Empire, quote, "At the basis of the geopolitical construction of this Eurasian Empire, there must be placed one fundamental principle, the principle of a common enemy. A negation of Atlanticism, a repudiation of the strategic control of the United States, and the rejection of the supremacy of economic liberal market values. This represents the common civilizational basis, the common impulse which will prepare the way for a strong political and strategic union," close quote. So basically, the Eurasian Empire is basically the union of America haters. Now that sounds lovely. Now, this is the man who, in mid-1990s, when he was writing this book, was also the main agitator for an organization called the National Bolshevik Party, an informal fascist organization that managed to get its own members of parliament, no less, in internal Russian politics. Now, this organization, the National Bolshevik Party, eventually did split along the lines of Putin-loving. So Dugin was on the Putin-loving splinter group, which now no longer uses the name National Bolshevik Party, but rather calls itself the Neo-Eurasian Movement. Anyway, back to Dugin's books. Dugin's Plan for Europe, page 369, quote, "The task of Moscow is to tear Europe away from the control of the United States, to assist European unification, and to strengthen ties with Central Europe under the aegis of the fundamental external axis Moscow-Berlin. Eurasia needs a united, friendly Europe." And in pages 251 to 252, Dugin had already clarified that the goal is a, quote, "supranational empire in which ethnic Russians would, quote, occupy a privileged position," close quote. Now, if you
segregation, class warfare, classes. And look, Russia, the Russian people and Russia itself should advocate for itself, just like the United States and the United States people of the United States should advocate for themselves. Problem is Dugin acts like he is on our side, trying to liberate us. Okay, yes, our government is oppressive. Do not get me wrong, but he's acting like the good guy. He acts like the good guy. When you hear him on Alex Jones, when you hear him being interviewed by Jay Dyer, when you hear him being platform boosted by many people, that's mostly on the right when it comes to alternative media community. Dugin is seems like he's our guy, but he's anything but. Okay, like he doesn't. They were trying. Duginism was trying in the white nationalist circles to try to frame Russia as white man come home, right? Only to funnel them into the base, only for them to be radicalized.
And it seems to be the same with the quote unquote ortho bro movement as well. It's another one of those come home,
And there are genuine people who are Orthodox, Christian Orthodox. Don't get me wrong, but there is that kind of orthobro move, white man come home, come to Russia type aspect of that. And I do believe there are Christians who will be saved out of the Orthodox Church. So look, there's some weird plays going on here. All right, it's extremely complicated. Any thoughts, S90, before I finish this clip?
Nope, just keep playing. We got ways to go.
I think that resembles the Soviet Union. You would, of course, be correct. And Dugin himself is very open about it and admits it one page later at page 253, where he notes that his ethnic model is quite similar with the Soviet Union. And by quite similar, we will be excused if we presume to mean identical, since I have yet to see anything in Dugin's visions of the future that does not lead to gulags and extreme poverty by means of socialism. Anyway, enough with this book, let's go to the other book that is relevant to understanding Duginism, Четвертая политическая теория, or the fourth political theory. Now, this book is published in 2012 when Dugin was already an advisor for the Kremlin, and it is 15 years after the overt totalitarianism of mid-1990s. Now, I would dare to say that by the time he started writing the fourth political theory, Dugin himself became more, let's say, intellectually disciplined and also a lot more aware of the fact that you can't just go.
Yes, Jalil, you're correct. Come to Russia, come to Mother Russia and tell KGB priest all your secrets and confession, white man.
To the world and say, hello chaps, I'm here with the Eurasian Empire. Hey there, Germany. Now, in the intro, I compared Duginism with cultural Marxism for the simple reason that it follows the exact same path. It started out as a splinter group of the Bolsheviks and then gradually refining itself to become more subversive and a lot less open about its goals. Now, if you remember, the Frankfurt School outright refused to call its institution the Institute for Marxism, but rather opted for a more vague term of Institute for Social Research. Same goes with Duginism. You see, it's not Duginism, but it's Continentalism, which is opposed to Atlanticism, and it's not about creating a Russian empire, but about a united and friendly Europe. See how this goes?
Under Russia. Russia.
Of course.
Okay.
Yes, because remember he said Russians will have a privileged position. Right, so this is literally like Untermensch types.
Under Russia, United
point.
Europe and Russia, where the Asiatic Russians are dominant. Okay. Wow.
Yes.
Whoa.
Yes, united and friendly under my boot.
Now, granted, both Bannon and Dugin wanted to destroy the European Union. Now, granted, Bannon wanted to do so to kind of push the United Kingdom and kind of maybe push parts of Europe. They're going to I believe they had some sort of thing where they're going to divide Europe, and maybe Bannon was going to double-cross Dugin or vice versa, where Bannon wanted the United Kingdom and majority of, what is considered to be Western Europe, France, Germany, Spain, to ally itself more with the United States of America and, kind of like Eastern Europe, Ukraine, Poland, to be back under the communist USSR. That's what Dugin wanted, right? And so I'm not saying that would have happened. I'm not saying that's a good thing. Okay, I'm not saying, all I'm saying is, or good or a bad thing. Okay, is at least as far as I don't think that I think the Eastern European countries should be under their own rule, or as much as I pain to say this, under the European Union over Russia. But I mean, look, we're all talking utopia here, okay? None of us have any control over this. None of us have any power. I myself am a very strict non-interventionalist, but at the same time, I understand that America does need to maintain dominancy against Russia and China. It's quite difficult to juggle that, but yeah, I mean,
well, and it's
tough.
easy to see because they're also forming their own Eurasian economic zone, basically, and right now it's only got about 5 or 6 countries involved in it at all. But having watched a few, actually, it's kind of a side note, but having watched some of these travel videos of YouTubers who go to different countries and travel around, one guy would always ask, he'd be like, was life better under the USSR or now? And most of the old people would argue that it was better under the USSR, because now that it's all splintered into all these little countries, countries like Transnistria suffer greatly, and they're pillaged by their politicians. And so it's easy to understand why some of these people would want to at least, they're not looking at it from, ooh, this ideology is superior to yours. They're just thinking my quality of life was better under that system than it is now. And so there's a certain amount of slack that we have to give some people who especially the older generations, who would want to return to that way of life. It's not necessarily on an ideological basis, but more like a quality of life way of dealing with it. So that was just a side thought kind of that I'd seen watching some travel videos. And it seems to play into what Dugin wants ultimately, right?
Yes, very much so. All right, let's continue.
Of this, let's say, increased discipline from Dugin, the fourth political theory starts out from a less insane premise, so to speak. So it starts with the introduction called "To Be or Not to Be." Now let me read you a bit from it, with the note that I read the book originally in Russian, and this is not my translation. My translation. So, from the introduction of the fourth political theory, quote, "For our country," Russia that is, "the fourth political theory has, in addition to everything else, a large practical significance. The majority of Russians suffer integration into the global community dramatically, like a deprivation of their identity. The liberal ideology in the 1990s was almost entirely rejected by the populace. But together with that, it is intuitively understandable that the appeal to the illiberal political ideologies of the 20th century, to communism and fascism in our society, is unlikely, since those very ideologies already proved themselves historically as failures in opposition to liberalism, to say nothing of the moral costs of totalitarianism. Therefore, in order to fill the void, Russia needs a new political idea. Liberalism does not fit, but communism and fascism are unacceptable. Consequently, we need a fourth political theory. And if for someone this is a question of free choice, the realization of political will, which can always be directed both to an assertion and its negation, then for Russia this is a question of life and death, a Hamlet-like question. If Russia selects "to be", then this automatically signifies the creation of a fourth political theory. In the opposite case, there remains "not to be" and quietly leave the historical arena to dissolve into the global world, neither brought into being nor directed by us. Now, this is a far more sophisticated argument for Russian imperialism than what we have read in the Foundations of Geopolitics. For starters, it proclaims to denounce totalitarianism, while in the 1990s Dugin was an open fan of it. and then frames the issue into an existential one, namely that if Russians don't build an empire fast, they will simply die out as a civilization and as a people. Further in the introduction, Dugin explains that liberalism is the first political theory, communism is the second political theory, and fascism is the third political theory, and he then launches into a critique of liberalism after swiftly dismissing fascism as having died in its youth, his words, not mine, and communism as having died of decrepitude. He also describes liberalism as existing both as a left-wing flavor and a right-wing flavor. His critique of liberalism, however, is what persuades a lot of people to adopt elements of Duginist thinking without even realizing it. Now that's the part of Duginism that makes it so dangerous and also similar to cultural Marxism, which has become so entrenched that even hardline cultural Marxist activists don't even know where their ideas come from. By these kinds of mind games, Duginism attempts to accomplish basically the same thing. Now, mind you, the term itself, mind games,
Mind warfare, psychographical, psychological, and spiritual warfare, mind games. Isn't it so true that Dugin's calling all this stuff out, right? But he is doing the same stuff that he's calling out the Atlantean, the progressives, the CFR, the Bilderberg group, the left part of the world order, you know?
And
he's using the same tactics.
Yeah, and we've got Zach Mann in the chat just said, would we have a new world order or a multipolar world order? And that's exactly what we're looking at here. Either way, quote unquote, they win.
Yeah, let's continue.
Yep. Comes from Dugin's own website called 4pt.su. Now 4pt for the fourth political theory and SU from the Soviet Union. Anyway, before reading from Dugin's
and the
Soviet website, let's
exists,
read some more from the fourth political.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm just going to say you can still get a .su domain. I just thought it was funny.
Yeah. Red Athlon in chat says, look at the other guy propagandizing you, not me. Yeah, that's Dugin.
Political theory. So, Dugin on liberalism, the fourth political theory, chapter 1, very long quote. Here it goes. The end of liberalism and post-liberalism. It happened that the victory of liberalism, the first political theory, coincided with its end. But this paradox is only apparent. Liberalism initially showed itself forth as an ideology, not as dogmatic as Marxism, but no less philosophical, well-built and precise. It was ideologically opposed to Marxism and fascism, waging with them not only a technological war for survival, but also defending its right to a monopolistic formation of the way of the future. While other concurrent ideologies were alive, liberalism remained and grew stronger, particularly as an ideology, that is, a totality of ideas, opinions, and projections peculiar to a historical subject. Each of the three political theories had its own subject. The subject of communism was the class, the subject of fascism was the state in the Italian fascism of Mussolini, or the race in Hitler's National Socialism. In liberalism, the subject was the individual, freed from all forms of collective identity, from all kinds of attachment or l'appartenance. Now here's Dugin acknowledging being influenced by Alain Benoit, a French ideologue who actually admired Antonio Gramsci, that is a cultural Marxist, and Jean Baudrillard, also a cultural Marxist, yet who is for some reason thought to be conservative. Now, are you confused yet? Hold on, there's more, and the more...
Quite interesting. The right and the left coming together. Conservatism and democrats, huh?
This guy really is, as I said in the quote at the beginning, this guy is the palingenesis, the coming together of burned out parts to form a new whole.
Yes, very much so.
The more we progress, the more intentional the confusion gets. Anyway, confusion is the main tactic of Duginism, so back to the book. Where were we? Yeah, here. Quote, while the ideological fight had formal antagonists, entire narodi being the Russian word for peoples, and societies, at least theoretically, could select which subject to address themselves to. So the class-based, the racial, statist, or the individual. The victory of liberalism answered that question. The normative subject at the limits of all humanity became the individual. And soon appears the phenomenon of globalization, the model of a post-industrial society, the beginning of the epoch of post-modernity. From now on, the individual subject is no more the result of a choice, but some kind of compulsory given. A man is freed from attachments. The ideology of human rights becomes standard, at least in theory, and in fact compulsory. Mankind, composed of individuals, is naturally drawn to universalism, becomes global and integrated. Thus is born the project of world government and world rule, or globalism. The new level of technological development allows people to reach independence from the class structures of industrial societies, namely post-industrialism. The values of rationalism, science, and positivism are recognized as disguised form of totalitarian repressive strategies, i.e. big narratives, and are thus exposed to criticism with a parallel glorification of complete freedom and independence of individual from any restraining factors, for that matter from reason, morality, identities, social, ethnic, or even gender, discipline, and so on and so forth. Basically, postmodernism. At this stage, liberalism stops being the first political theory but becomes the only political practice. The end of history comes, politics is replaced by economics, by the global market, governments and nations are drawn into the melting pot of world globalization. Having won, liberalism disappears, transforming into something entirely different, post-liberalism. It no longer has a political dimension, it is not a matter of free choice but becomes a peculiar kind of fate, from which comes the thesis of post-industrial society, the economics of fate. Now, of course, the only problem is that this is not a critique of liberalism. Dugin is, of course, correct when he criticizes the excesses of modernity, but he misattributes this criticism to liberalism. There's nothing in the liberal tradition preventing people from associating. Actually, quite the opposite. Classical liberalism, which Dugin thinks it's the first political theory and the one that won the war for modernity. Well, classical liberalism actually absolutely insists on the natural right to free association. It is the leftist tradition that opposes free association, or at the very least seeks to include caveats to that right. A classical liberal thinks that on your own property, as well as on legitimately operated property, one is free to associate with whomever one wants.
Classical liberal is a term for Fabian socialists, though. I kind of disagree with the guy here. But
Yeah, I'm not saying I agree with
understand what
absolutely
he's
everything.
I understand what he's saying, though, as far as the the rights that are in the United States Constitution, for example, which could be considered liberal, rights, freedom.
And ultimately, liberalism isn't what Dugin places all of his blame on. We'll get to that shortly here.
A leftist, however, thinks that one is free to associate with whomever one wants, provided that one chooses to include everyone as long as one is white. So, a white students' union is perfectly legitimate in a classical liberal framework, whereas in a leftist framework, such thing is verboten. As we will see throughout this video, Dugin does this multiple times. He presents a valid criticism of something and then lays the blame on America, on liberalism, on capitalism, or on modernity in general, and he does that regardless of whether that is indeed the case or not. And as he laid out in his book The Foundations of Geopolitics, he's doing it intentionally, following the credo that the United States and what it stands for must be the scapegoat. In fact, it would be mistaken to assume that Dugin is simply committing an honest mistake. Dugin may have a highly dangerous and apocalyptic ideology, but he is not stupid. Dismissing him and his ideas as just a lunatic fringe is what got us into this mess to begin with. He is not stupid. He knows what he's doing and he knows it full well.
All right, so this is the one everyone's probably been looking forward to, I'm guessing. So people have seen the clip of Dugin saying, let us offer a prayer to Crowley. This is the full clip of where that was and what was going on, and so let's just we can go through the whole thing. We can skip through it if you want, but I think people are already getting a pretty good idea here.
We do got to show some of the occultism of why.
Oh yeah.
Alexander
Show as
Dugin
much
is
of
a
this clip as you
Satanist,
want. Is
why
what I'm
he's
saying.
an occultist, why he's a luminist, why he is not an old one. He is not an Orthodox Christian. He is not a Christian.
No, he is nothing but what you're gonna see here.
No. All right, let's go.
Says this is very wholesome.
The occultic will that was used by the Nazis. Oh yeah, and the spinning representation of the spinning crosses. Oh boy, chaos symbols and blasphemy, and Dugin's our guy. Right.
And I wanted to point out Hill Dog saying Russian neo-Eurasianism isn't Dugin's idea. No, it's not, but he is its primary proponent currently, right? Like we'll say Aleister Crowley is an evil black magician, but that doesn't mean it originated from him.
Correct.
It's just he was the one pushing it at the time, right? And someone else is pushing it now. Someone before him.
Yes.
Yeah, it goes on like this for a while. I think, this is so people played this clip, I believe, of the guy saying, let's offer a prayer to Crowley. And I know. Oh, okay. Anyway, it plays the full segment a little bit later in the clip. Basically, the guy saying offer a prayer to Crowley is not Dugin. Dugin is standing right next to the guy waiting to read a poem, this poem.
Yes, but Dugin isn't like saying, hey, I'm not down with this, all right?
Yeah,
like, I'm out,
he's there in the first place.
I'm out, I'm not gonna, I'm out.
He's enjoying his time there. Absolutely.
Bear asks, is this mocking Jesus? Yes. Yes.
For sure.
Is the bear spirit, the spirit of mockery. I mean, this is human mockery. This is chaos magic. It's it is an outright blasphemy. All right, Dugin claims he is an old one, an old Orthodox Church member. Okay. A member of the old Orthodox Church. If that is the case, if he truly was a Christian, if he truly was born again, okay?
He wouldn't even be there in the first place.
No, I would never be at something like this. I would, first of all, I would never be at something like this. But let's say if I somehow managed to stumble upon something like this, right? I start proclaiming the gospel. I start rebuking in the name of my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and of God the Father. I mean,
people's heads would start spinning around in circles.
Yeah, I mean, this is satanic. This is occultish, illuminist, and satanic.
Yeah. You can skip ahead a little bit. It plays the clip of the guy saying, there's a bit more of the performance, and then there's clips of the guy saying, let's offer a prayer to Crowley, and then Dugin reads the poem in full, it's like you get like Eyes Wide Shut vibes. You get like, oh, I don't know, man.
And not Greek Orthodox Church, Russian Orthodox Church. I need to make that known. He claims to be an old one of the old, Russian Orthodox Church. Old one means.
Right, so there's the guy in the blue suit who says, let's offer a prayer to Crowley. And I'll admit, like, having not watched this full clip, at first I was like, oh, that's young Dugin. No. I was wrong completely.
Так значит, нам нужна одна победа. Одна на всех мы ценой не постоим. Одна на всех мы ценой не постоим. Нас жжет огонь смертельный, и все ж бессилен он. Сомнения прочь, уходит ночь последний. 10-й наш десантный батальон. 10-й наш десантный батальон.
Uh-oh, did YouTube freeze? Oh, no.
Yep, cabaret, sex, magic, rituals. Yeah, oh boy, got it all here. Got it all.
Yikes. So much random weirdness.
Rose Maria Abramovich should have been there. Yeah. And
oh, who knows?
Mike, hope
Maybe
you're doing
she
well,
was.
brother. God bless you. Will symbolism, Saturnarian and Shiva. Yeah. Oh yeah. Dugin loves the Hinduism. Oh boy.
I think this is the one that everyone's seen.
I ask you to honor the memory of the deceased Aleister Crowley. Wow. Yeah, Mike, very postmodern.
Крови, минуты молчания. Если есть в зале какие-нибудь зажигалки и спички, вы можете зажечь и минуту помолчать.
Oh, Cooper asks, is this trad? No, I don't think it is.
О мой Бог, един Твой исток, един Твой дух, едино Твое изменение.
Now the translation's going to be awful on this. And most of it went over my head. But yeah, here we go. We got a 6-pointed star. Yeah. Does that seem very alt-right to anyone?
Ты явился
No?
мне как очень старый бог, достопочтимый бог, господин времени с острым серпом. Ты
Star in France.
явился мне как радостный и довольный бог, исполненный могущества король, отец в самом рассвете сил, с жезлом
Full of the king, father, and the prime of life of the different universe. Oh boy, Gnosticism.
вселенной,
Yeah,
коронованный
just
король
wait.
духа.
The crown.
Ты
Yeah.
явился мне с мечом и копьем, воинственный бог в зияющей броне, в сопровождении свиты рыцарей. Ты явился мне как юный и сияющий бог, бог музыки и красоты. Как
God of music. That would be Satan. Satan is God of music, the musician in heaven, the fallen angel. Oh boy.
бог
Yeah.
во всей
Just
своей
wait.
силе,
There's even some
взирающий на
theosophy in a minute here.
Ты явился мне как белая
You
стена,
had
как
garbage.
части тела магической женщины, как богиня экстремальной любви с золотым поясом. Ты явился мне как юный коварный мальчишка с твоей крылатой державой, как змеями, свившимися вокруг жезла. Ты явился мне как охотница посреди своей своры, как чистая девственная богиня, как луна между вековыми дубами. Но ничего из этого меня не обмануло.
Goddess worship.
Я отбросил все эти видения и закричал: «Пойдите прочь». И все они исчезли. И тут я сплавил вместе пылающую пятиконечную звезду и шестиконечную
Flaming
звезду в тени своей
5-pointed
души.
star and a
Смотри,
6-pointed
вот
star.
появилась звезда 418 над всем этим. Но на этот раз ничего из этого меня не обмануло, потому что у короны 12 лучей, и все эти 12 суть одно.
Oh, crown, 12
А
keys,
сейчас я увидел
12 rays.
противоположные, дурные вещи. Но они не существовали так же, как не существуешь и ты. Я видел две головы на одном туловище, которые постоянно бьются друг с другом, и поэтому все их мысли пребывают в смешении. В них я видел тебя. Я видел убийц мудрости, как черные обезьяны, они бормотали порочные глупости. В них я видел тебя.
Did he just call
Я
them
видел
monkeys?
агрессивных матерей ада,
That's not
разрывающих
very nice.
своих детей. О, вы, которые не имеете понимания, в них я видел тебя. Я видел безжалостных и полностью
You got the
лишенных
sevenfold
снисхождения
rays, you got
существ,
the 12 rays
раздирающих
of
как
light.
гады свою
Yeah,
добычу. В них я видел тебя. Я
Sevenfold
видел
rays.
огненных существ, гигантов, как вулканы,
So many
извергающих в
rays.
бешенстве черную блевотину огня и дыма. В них я видел тебя. Я видел мерзавцев, скандальных агрессоров, эгоистов. Они были как люди, о Господи. Господи, они были так похожи на людей. И в них я видел тебя. Я видел воронов смерти, парящих с хриплыми криками над развратной землей. В них я видел тебя. Я видел духов лжи, прыгающих, как лягушки по земле, и по воде, и по мерзостному металлу, которые все разъедают и сам не сохраняется. В них я видел тебя. Я видел богопротивные перверсии, людей-быков,
So
прикованных
the
в
part
песни.
at the end with Crowley and all the iconography and everything, where did that come from? This is someone in the video put that in?
Oh, at the end, yeah. This is someone's channel. This is a channel that really doesn't like
режущих
Dugin,
друг
but
друга
they're
языками
Portuguese,
страданиях.
so they
В
have
них
the
я видел
Portuguese
тебя.
subtitles
Я
for
видел
their
женщину, о
audience.
Бог мой. Я действительно видел ее, подобно роскошной даме, скрывающей под внешними формами черную обезьяну. Подобно силуэтке, призывающей своими руками маленькое подобие человечка в ад, я разглядел, что от головы до пояса это была женщина.
Hill Doggy Doggy asks, John Brisson, you do see that the Pilgrims are totally insane and must be opposed at all costs. How about the Pilgrim Society? Both sides are not our guys. All right, Russia is not our guy. The United States is not our guy. The Old World Order is not our guy. And the New World Order is definitely not our guy. Okay, I'm gonna
they're
get
both bad.
Yeah, they're both bad. Look,
Both
Dugin
roads
is
lead to
literally going to
destruction.
say that smart cities and cyborgs are only going to come out of the United States of America. There's smart cities in China and Russia. I mean, Kevin Marsden and I, disclosed Skolkovo. All right, and the connections between Skolkovo, Biden, and Hillary. Okay, so look. Nothing against the Russian people. Nothing against my American brothers and sisters, okay? They're not a part of this, all right? But the elites are all together, okay? The Russian elites, Putin is not our guy. Trump is not our guy. Biden's not our guy. Bolsonaro's not our guy, okay? None of these people are our guys. None of them. Xi Jinping is not our guy. Dugin gets on his knees for Xi Jinping. That should concern you. Okay? The Belt and Road Initiative, as much as, I have issues with Brendan O'Connell, he's right about that. The transfer of technology and power from, the United States and Europe to Russia, Israel, and China, brokered by Switzerland. Okay? Like, that's all a problem. It's all a problem.
Пояса опять мужчина, в ней я видел тебя, потому что я сдал пароль закрытого дворца 480 и держал в руках поводья колесницы сфинкса, черные и белые. Но ни одна из этих вещей не обманула меня, поскольку своим мастерством я развил их все в 12 лучей короны. И эти 12 лучей были одни.
Ray operations.
Doggy Dog says Anglo-Atlanticists are out of their mind. Okay, so why are you using Duginist terms? You don't think
that person already said in chat earlier that they're down with the Continental Bloc Party or whatever they said. So
I mean, if you're a Russian and or former Soviet country, then yeah, you can have that opinion. But I'm gonna and look, I'm not for progressivism, just like I ain't for conservatism either or Fabian socialism. All right, but again, I am American. I am an American. Russia needs to ally with Germany? This would create... No, it would not. Russia is not our guy. Putin is not our guy. Putin allied himself with the Zionists, with Shabbat Lubavitch. Jeez Louise. I'm not talking about the Russian people. I'm talking about the elite of Russia. There are no elites for us. There never was and never will be, okay, in this modern age of the rule of man. All right, let's move on to the next clip.
Yeah, and so this is Dugin talking about transhumanism. If you just skip to 535 in this, we'll just get a really quick summary of what he thinks about transhumanism.
Okay. Which, again, he claims he's against it, but only America's doing it when Russia and China are also doing it. Come on.
Skip to 535.
Здравствуйте, вы смотрите программу «Директива Дугина». Сегодня речь не пойдет о...
I gotta translate it.
Yeah, translate and then just skip to 5 minutes, 35 seconds.
No, I don't believe that. That was a psychological operation pushed by Pasovic. All right, let's see. At one time, I did believe it to be true a year ago. I do not now. All right.
You're scrolling down. You got to scroll up to English.
I was trying to scroll down to the United States. So used to doing that would pick your country. All right, there you go.
Таком явлении, как
Today we deal with
трансгуманизм.
the transhumanist current is growing in popularity all over the world, especially in the West where it originated. A circle with the Latin letter H for human, English human, and a plus sign H plus became the symbol. Followers of this trend enthusiastically accept all given current technologies and lead the idea of progress to its logical conclusion. In their opinion, the perfecting of technology also leads mankind if an artificial perfecting is possible on the basis of the human species. This is achieved by perfecting all parts of the human body through exchange with artificial elements. Indistinguishable from the ordinary body parts or internal organs. The technology of so-called mapping, in which consciousness is limited to or stored in separate carriers, a mapping of the brain also relates to this. The latest discoveries in the area of gene structures make it possible to correct the organism. Improve its qualities also on a fundamental level. H plus embodies a post-humanity that will be free from pain and inadequacies, and will ultimately have attained physical immortality. It will be possible to change or repair the body and after a certain time also print it out of 3D printers. The virtual networks are becoming the new living environment and are gradually displacing the reality we are used to completely. Against a background of H plus utopias and dystopias, such as the Lawnmower Man or the Matrix, appear most archaic and overcome. Transhumanism is not just an activity for eccentric designers or fanatics of technical progress. It is a resulting vector of the last few centuries, when humanity began to seriously believe the myth of progress and evolution. H plus is the ultimate consequence of all epochs of the modern age. The modern idea of modernity was about the liberation of man from all his ties and limitations. It's all started with religion, tradition, and civil society. But remember in all this, chat, remember, Dugin loves the Bolsheviks.
Nosbol.
Yeah, and look, I am not for transhumanism at all in the slightest bit. I've done shows with Billy Ray Valentine and with Wade McCroy on transhumanism, okay? I'm a Luddite with technology in a lot of ways, okay? I am. I refuse to get a 5G phone, all right? And to the last possible time that I can. But, like, look, the framing that the United States is the only people, the Atlanticist powers are the only people involved in transhumanism, the Old World Order is the only people involved in transhumanism, get the heck out of here. China and Russia are doing it too.
Yeah. There was an interesting show that was suggested to me, and it was a fictional show about Norway was opening a thorium salt power generator, and they would no longer be reliant on Russian gas imports, which we now see as a problem in Europe this year. But in order to, so basically they essentially invaded Norway in this show. They essentially invaded Norway and forced them to shut down the plant so that they would still be reliant on it. And it was just an interesting dynamic of how they were being left behind, and they didn't want to be in second place, essentially. And it almost seems like the reputation, like you're saying, they're involved in this too. They just can't handle being in second or third place. And so they're telling the runners in the race ahead of them, like, stop, the race is over. And meanwhile, they're still running, right? So that they can cross the finish line first. It's a pretty desperate gamble. But if you just skip the video to 5 minutes and 35 seconds, it's a pretty good summary. He's just talking about, general transhumanist talking points. But just go to 5 minutes, 35 seconds to get his overall view, the main point of it all.
But the difference between me and you, Doggy Dog, and I like you too as well, don't get me wrong, is, yes, I'm against the Atlanticist Democrat Pilgrim faction, the CFR, the Trilateral Commission, well, they're kind of outdated now, the Bilderberg Group, the Old World Order in that regard. Yes, I am against that. But I'm also against the Great Awakening, the conservatives, the Council for National Policy, the Lasser-Kell, group too as well. Neither one of them are good. Neither one of them have our best interests as heart in the world, okay? Whether it's, what's his name? The Rothschild banker in France. Help me out. The Prime Minister of France.
Macron.
Macron. So whether it's Macron or Biden or Germany's female Merkel, any of them, or whether it's Bolsonaro, Trump, Putin, Xi Jinping. None of them.
Narendra Modi in India is a big player right now.
None of them are our guys. That's the thing.
No. And in the end, what it looks like watching all this Duginist stuff and watching the world stage play out of continentalism versus Atlanticism, it seems like these people share a religion, but they just sort of disagree on what their end goal looks like. One wants a sort of scientific dictatorship where they can tell you what to put in your body and, shut you out of society.
Which we don't want, and we're both against.
Right. And the other side seems to just like the general... they seem to be more fond of like the boot to the throat and selling weapons and puppeteering,
and
having
wars
puppet
and
nations
forever
and stuff.
wars and drug running.
And we're against that too.
Yes, we're against
both.
So
there's no side where for normal people who just think like, hey, could we just mind our own business and live our lives and,
Yeah.
And that's what this is.
Yes, that's all. Then the state of the nation were destroyed in favor of civil society. Furthermore, all normative ideas regarding genders and regular families have been abolished. Yeah, that's a problem. That's progressivism. That's, I'm not going to call it Atlantis. I'm not going to use those terms, but that, yes, I mean, as a Christian conservative, I have issues with this. And various forms of gender mutations and perversions have been legalized. But to say that these aren't going on in Russia, they claim that they're not, but they are. Or to say this isn't happening in China, claim that they're not, but they are. I mean, come on. All this happened about the background of technical perfection, the new forms of production, computer technology, successes in programming, and the synthesis of new materials. Gradually, ideology technology blurred into something holistic and indivisible. Technical progress became an ideological factor, and ideology in term nothing more than political ideology. This is why the classic forms of politics were exchanged by the political technicians. And so now we crossed over the last phase of human liberation from restricting limits. In the West, there's no longer any religion, no state in the full-fledged sense, no political hierarchy, no normal families, and at least almost none. Okay, that's not true. All forms of border-crossing transgression have been completed in full. That's fear-mongering. There's only one final step left to push the boundaries of the human species itself. That is exactly what H+ means. It is the last word of power, the power of liberalism. Transhumanism is not a bizarre byproduct of technological development, but the logical end of the modern age. We had no choice but the era of cyborgs, hybrids, mutants, and chimeras. I'm not going to play the rest of this clip, S90, because I'm going to read from his book later that discusses this. Is there anything else you think I should play as part of this that's worth it, or can we skip it and I discuss it later? S90? S90, did I lose you? S90, you there? All right, I think I left S90 for a minute. All right, let's play a different clip. Here we go. America is the kingdom of the Antichrist, okay? An occultist, an illuminist, he's going to tell us this, okay? So let's start.
Того, чтобы понимать, что такое постмодерн,
and understand what postmodernism, one must know what modern is. To know what modern is not enough to know the theory. One must be inside modern. To be inside modern means to have two properties of subject, reason and will. The two things are fundamentally missing in our Russian society. We're lacking reason and will. The things we're calling this way are not reason and will. This is why our postmodern is an imitation of something that exists elsewhere, where modern had previously begun, ran through, was overcome with the new stage. We, however, are actually somewhere on the first approaches to modern. Our tradition of modernization went in its own specific way, in a Russian way. Secondly, it effectively destroyed traditional structures, but didn't effectively create modernist structures. And the most important part of transition from archaic to modern society didn't happen. The percentage of archaics in our society is greater than that of modern. The formation of subject of something that has reason and will, and acts according to real reason and will. It didn't happen. Certain elements of this existed in the forms of the Bolsheviks, Peter, the old believers, who stood out amongst the common conformist Christian, who really stood out amongst the common conformist Christianity. So again, the Bolsheviks were the heroes. The Christian czars were not. They would say, I believe and act like this. They were burned, of course, for this, and still would continue their way in spite of majority. The ability to think based on one's own will and one's own understanding of truth is essentially absent in Russian culture. The project of postmodern is in reality will devoid. It states that only the void is a true relief from its point of view. And the subject must transition from his relative destruction activity to the absolute one, which is directed against himself. In other words, to transition from an individual, which was the peak of modern and culminated in the victory of liberalism, divine right of man, to the individual, how long can it continue to parasite and take delight in the subject of death? Quite a lot of time, actually. Because what moving to this void is possible to offspring a lot of cultural and aesthetic paradigms. Because the whole gigantic program of the Age of Enlightenment is the subject to decay and postmodernism. And that was truly a gigantic problem. The whole modern becomes a subject to some antinomic dismemberment. And if one studies Deleuze, his philosophical beliefs, his proposal transitioning to specific formats of pre-somatic existence, of creation of pseudo-past and pseudo-future, the existence of sporadic time traveling.
Yeah, I think that's a mistranslation.
This is a huge set of ideas, a huge postmodernistic program from the point of view of archaic Christian consciousness.
Yeah, and this is where he starts kind of...
The program could be regarded as pure Satanism. So our beliefs of Satan is archaic as Christians, you guys. Okay, this occultist dare, Satanist dare, tells us, oh, it's archaic to believe in Satan. It's archaic to believe in, evil powers and principalities. This time without any nuances. But generally speaking, this really is a society of Antichrist, which is being built in the West. And I think this creative potential is not yet exhausted here. There will be dark miracles. There will be certain things that will keep people in awe. Genetic engineering, for instance. Today we see the last humans. We haven't seen the first post-humans, which will soon appear. These will have to be mutants, clones, armies of cyborgs. And those are not just some fairy tales, not just science fiction. It's interesting that Dugin parrots a lot of Alex Jones parrots a lot of Dugin, And I'm not saying that some of the stuff that Dugin says isn't true, okay? It's what he leaves out, and that it's who he is and how he spins it, okay? Yes, as a Christian conservative, I want, the nuclear family structure. I am, pro-life. I am anti-homosexual marriage. I'm pro-biblical and Christian views. So, I mean, yes, I'm against a lot of progressivism or progressive mindsets, okay? Or liberalism, all right? That being said, though, this guy's full of crap, all right? And yes, he may say those things, but he doesn't believe those things. This guy is a deceiver and a liar and a Satanist.
We've pretty much already seen all of those in the clips so far, and there's plenty more to go.
All the science fiction of the 19th century came to pass in the 20th. Almost all of it. All of these cyborgs are the thing of tomorrow, and we have yet to see. The West has not yet reached the limit of its degeneration in postmodernism. Yeah, but it's the whole world. If we look at the book of Revelation, the whole world degrades. Not just the West. Not just the East. The whole world degrades. The whole world is sinful. So from one point of view, it's good that we're not going there. But not going there doesn't mean going somewhere else. That's why the rational thing would be not going somewhere, but going somewhere. Either to modern and then to postmodern into the chasm, as our liberals suggest, these consistent modernists, the collective subconscious of Russian people, by the way, blocks this path. What about Christian conservatives? What about?
No, it's just Russians, John. It's just the Russians. They are the chosen ones.
Okay. Or to switch the path of conservative revolution, but then it is necessary to shoot the works and say that the whole program of enlightenment, not just as postmodernist development, all this is fundamental delusion.
Okay, so there we have it. This is what he blames.
Only religion is of the highest value, and we must return. But what religion, Dugin? Traditional system of values consciously, consistently, and wisely. Well, yeah, but not what you believe.
No, and
while throwing the program of
blames.
modern away into the dump, saying no to it. All right, go ahead, S90.
That's what he blames for all of this. It's not liberalism that he blames. He blames the Enlightenment for all of this. In his books, in other interviews that I haven't included in this, he blames the Enlightenment. And in one of the, I don't think I have this clip in here, but he says, we must go back to when the problem began and try again. And he's talking, and he says, and the guy asks him, like, what problem are you talking about? And he's like, oh, the Enlightenment.
I mean,
so he wants to undo it all, keep the fruits that it's given, but undo it all and then try a different evolution from there.
And look, you know, you can have different stances, right? Some people believe the Enlightenment, that the Age of Enlightenment was a good thing. You have some Christians who believe that. You have some Christians who believe the Dark Ages weren't really truly dark and it was the rule of the church, and that's a progressive, liberal, satanic lie. I don't know. But I can tell you that this man is full of crap.
I think this clip is almost over.
Yeah.
When credits start rolling through, it's like 5 minutes and something seconds.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. So it's like a minute left.
Well, having revised not just our history, but also these endless self-evident cliches.
Revised history.
About, development, technology, democratization. To say all of this was devil's delusion, but who's capable of this? This is not less radical than modernization. And so we're stuck. We're not going anywhere. We're being dragged to doom. But if the West goes to its doom consistently and following its own trajectory, then we're simply washed away into the chasm by the wave. And our archaics, our roots, they resist it, they hook to the bottom. And in regards to the morbid state or archaic modern, the fact that we resist, this speaks not only about our foolishness, but also that we do not want there. But something healthy still remains in us. The fact that our organism is sick with archaic modern means that it's still silly, that it does not yet hopelessly decayed compared to Western society, which lost its archaics and went into synthetic subjectivity, synthetic even in constructs of René Descartes and Immanuel Kant. And today is machine-like subjectivity or post-subjectivity. By its own will, and really nothing will remain there. All archaics were pumped into modern and filled the gigantic demonic energy of Western civilization and Western technology. There you go.
There's the kicker.
Oh, Cooper said a new chronology. That's right, bud. We're going to get to that in a minute. We're going to get to Grand Tartaria. From Mako's new chronology, Coop. That's right, Coop. That's right.
Yep. And it's interesting to note that that was Winston's job in 1984, right, was to revise history. And it's also interesting to note that in 1984, I do believe that there was the Eurasian Empire or whatever was one of the countries, along with Oceania and Airstrip 1 and all that.
Okay, let's go.
Well, it's just interesting. So this is an interview.
And what you pointed out.
You can pause this really quickly. This is an interview on a very small channel. And this guy's the guest. His name is Sheikh Wazid Azal or something, and he has a personal problem with Dugin. So let's listen to this. It's a bit long, but it's interesting nonetheless.
The opportunism of people like Imran Hussein. I experienced the exact same opportunism where Imran Hussein is concerned within my own extended family.
Hill Doggy Dog mentions that Russia knows that Dugin is a Thalemite posing as Orthodox. Yeah, many Russian people do, but he still works and serves Putin. That's the problem.
Because there's a member, an extended member of my family, that was very fast promoted within the Duginist and Russian alt media ecology. As a result of my falling out with these people. As soon as he found out where his interest lies, that it was in his interest not only to distance himself from me, but also to denounce me publicly. Then all of a sudden, this guy got promoted. He then became a regular on Peter Lavelle's crosstalk, and now he's a darling of these Russian, alt media people, and also he's constantly being called on Press TV to appear, and on it goes. I mean, it was only a couple of days after my interview with Newsbud came out that this individual was just then placed within the editorial team of Newsbud. That's how duplicitous all of this is.
Yes.
I think Sybil Edmonds ultimately regretted her decision, not realizing that she was playing with fire, because she ended up getting burnt very badly by these people. But these people are players. They prey on people's gullibility. They prey on people's, desire for fame and notoriety.
Mike asked if Dugin had a official position in the Russian government. Currently, he does not. But he is a freelance propagandist, and yes, he is in line with the elite of Russia, with Dugin, with Xi Jinping in China, which is why he glorifies Xi Jinping. Why, in Tenenbaum's book, War on Eternity, that Bannon supposedly had to fallen out with Dugin because he realized that Dugin was in bed with Xi Jinping.
Well, he's also an employee of Moscow State University, so I don't know if that's a public or a private institution, but he could be classified as a government employee, I suppose, if you wanted to be technical.
Yeah, but I mean, he's off the record. Okay.
Yeah, he's sort of like an unofficial spokesman.
Now, Doggy Dog, you might be able to help me with this. He does go on Tegserad TV, which is Konstantin Malaviv. Shout out to I Read Old Magazines. His network, that's like the quote-unquote Fox News of Russia, right? Or am I missing something here?
Well, Malaviv runs Kate-Han Institute with him.
Yeah. So, I mean...
So, that's another, yeah. And this guy actually talks about that in a sec.
Not right now, Oswald. We'll have another show. We might not even get to my part today. We might only be able to cover what S90's come together. It's probably going to be a multi-part series. Okay.
And work. And this individual in my extended family is a MBA from Cambridge. He's well educated, but because of his association with the Russians and this, Russian media ecology, this guy has completely shot his prospects of a genuine career once all of this falls apart. And these people in Russia are not going to, pick him up and give him work or, what are these people thinking, I mean, things got so weird and wacky in that 2017, particularly with this individual I just mentioned. This guy was threatening publicly myself and my wife on the Facebook wall of Pepe Escobar. And he's actually, a person of interest to the German federal police in their ongoing investigation to what happened to my wife, Roya. And this individual is also, I should mention this, as we've talked about this before, not only part of that whole Russian alt media crowd, he's also a card-carrying member of the Baha'i faith simultaneously. And the Baha'i authorities are not...
Baha'i, huh?
Yes.
Baha'i,
so you'll see these things coming together. Now, I want to point out, I don't agree with everything this guy says. And the next clip from this interview that comes after this one is going to trigger a lot of people, but I left it in there for a reason. So I don't agree with and I'm going to tell you who these people are after we watch these clips, and you can see why they have the opinions that they have. And like I said, I don't agree with everything, but let's continue.
Yeah. Hill Doggy Dog says Lymanov, Edard Lymanov, was Dugin's best man in 1995. Very interesting. Thank you for letting us know that.
We're not doing anything about this guy either, which then tells you, where these nexuses of interest lie, because in 2016, almost to the last man and woman, the entire...
Wow, okay, so looking at Lymanov, he's a postmodern writer and poet that wrote a novel with pornographic scenes and obscene language. So, ooh, boy... I thought Dugin was against that. I guess he's not. Oopsie doopsie.
Russian and Iranian subculture of Iranian Baha'is all solidly became Trumpists. People within my own extended family, aunts, uncles, etc., were waving.
Yes, Cooper. Baha'i is communitarianism. It's kind of like a one-world religion. All religions are equal.
It's like that old David Icke quote where he's like, the prisoners are the prison guards. It's where the community polices itself against wrong things.
It's just the old world religion, It's all.
And I just want to point out to the crowd, it used to be on Wikipedia when you would type in communitarianism on Wiki, and I showed you this, John. You would type communitarianism into Wikipedia, and it would say something like theory of law that is now, or theory of practice that is now law in most of the world, also closely related to Noahide laws. And I just had to laugh, and someone's already gone in there and edited that out. But you can go into the edit history of the communitarianism Wikipedia page and see that that was in there and when it was changed and who changed it.
One thing I mispronounced is not Baha'i, of course, isn't old world religion; it's new world religion. But it is the the mystery Babylon religion, just another telling of such is what I meant to say. So.
The MAGA symbol, and we're just beating their chest for Donald Trump as the savior, thinking that maybe Donald Trump was going to actually, send his the U.S. Army into Iran and liberate Iran from the mullahs. Obviously, that never happened. But yeah, you found all of this amongst these people, and this is how wacky all of this became, where a insignificant minority of individuals within the United States who preach love and brotherhood and kumbaya during an election campaign of 2016 are pulled by these very forces that we're talking about into the camp of Donald Trump and become his supporters, offering their vote, their resources, their money, their time, the amount of families and people whose lives were shattered by all of this, and now on the back of this, with this whole QAnon nonsense, is unbelievable. And Mr. Dugin, as the contractor of these forces that we're talking about, was smack in the middle of all of this. The Baha'is of the United States, and particularly the Iranian Baha'i community, were smack in the middle of all this. There is evidence of this on multiple fronts, because that docs blog that this individual calling themselves Akira Kalashnikov, but who is really this Polish-American gentleman who's currently living in Warsaw and is part of the whole Duginist intellectual scene. He mentioned overtly in that blog on me that he went directly to the Baha'i Internet Agency and the Baha'i authorities to get a file on me so that he could then create a docs blog, right? So the nexus of fascists and Baha'is is now established, openly admitted to by themselves, and openly, displayed on the other side as well. So, this stuff is bad.
Remember, one of the social principles that the Baha'i faith, again, it is New World Order religion, is unity of God, unity of religion, unity of humanity, equality, total equalism, elimination of all forms of prejudice, world peace, and a new world order. Harmony of religion and science, independent investigation of truth. Yeah, okay. So, I mean, yes, there are some things, as Christian, not to be prejudiced, love thy neighbor as thyself, prohibition of slavery, there's some things, of course, but, it sounds good on the surface, right? This is the Mystery Babylon, this is the one world religion, the new religion of the world, the religion of love and light, among others. They have the same echoes, the same tenets. They sound all good, kumbaya, hold each other's hands and everything, but they're anything but that. All right.
This sowing of chaos, playing all sides, confusing people, preying on people like demons. This stuff is not only bad, but it must be confronted. And conscientious people, whatever faith you belong to, whatever movement, whatever belief system, you have a God-given, spirit-given responsibility to confront this stuff wherever it rears its head, because it will eventually come to your doorstep one way or another, as it came to my doorstep through this individual I mentioned, and also because, as the German police investigators believe, whoever was responsible for stalking my late wife and poisoning her was directly connected to the Dugin organization. They targeted us, because of our activism, whether on the internet or on the streets of Berlin, against the AfD and these fascist forces that were beginning to rise in that country, which the Duginists cultivated, which people like Manuel Oxenreiter and his magazine Zu Erst were actively cultivating all throughout Germany.
And these people here in America, a lot of them are delusional because they're following this Duginist crowd. And Dugin himself espouses the destruction of America. So it just doesn't make sense for these people that this guy is basically asking for the destruction of your homeland, and you're falling into these traps of these different disinformation agendas and these agents of chaos that have infiltrated all races, religions, groups of the world, that it's like a web, like you said, this nexus, it's all tied in together. Who is who? They're everywhere.
Roya of beloved memory, a little over a week before her passing, came to me one day and said, look, I feel there's something targeting us.
Yes.
So I told her, put 2 canisters of mace in your purse, don't go into uncrowded streets. If you go in public transportation, sit in the most crowded place. Make sure if you go out with Nuri, you're always with somebody accompanied. We did all of this.
Yeah.
Yet on that final day of her life, when Roya and Nuri went out alone, just doing some basic errands a few blocks away from our house, something got to Roya. And this is basically what the Germans believe now, or somebody. And if these people are determined to get you, they will get you. But the people that targeted us and the people that targeted my wife are part of these very forces. So I have a personal bone to pick with Mr. Aleksandr Dugin. And, he might think that this is all, just a job to him or whatever political ambitions that he has long term. But, when you go after people's family, that's something else. And when especially one member of their family then ends up dead without any explanation being offered by, German, local authorities, whether the coroner or otherwise, then, these people have to answer. If not in this life, then definitely in the next one. So these people are playing with fire. On the other hand, there are certain forces that believe that is precisely what they want. They want to create.
Any comments? That's not anybody in all of this, real quick.
No, let's just keep going. Let's let him.
Dugin's very suspect. This group's very suspect, eh?
Well, his followers are suspect to the German police for this. Let's put it that way.
Mysterious deaths, eh?
A civil war, European-wide, between Europeans and the Muslim immigrant population, and particularly in Germany itself. They're trying to stoke this. This is already to some degree a fact within France. But this also seems to be an agenda within Germany. Now, in France, after the Charlie Hebdo event, which, as far as I'm concerned, was committed by these NATO, standby groups posing as Islamists.
Yes.
Mr. Imran Hussein goes on his pedestal and is then encouraging a mass exodus of Muslims from France back to their home country. So you're talking about second, third generation Algerians and Moroccans and people from all over the Muslim world who've been there with their families in France for a couple of generations, being dictated to by this imbecile to basically destroy their lives, their careers, their families, their businesses, and go back because the agenda of Mr. Aleksandr Dugin and his white supremacist neo-Nazi plutocratic friends like the Mercer family wishes to,
Council for National Policy, Mercer family. Why would the Mercers be working with Dugin? Cambridge Analytica, SEL Group.
The host is going to bring up something interesting too, because it's not just these groups that are having this. Because like this guy said, he's like, people are being told to leave their homes, leave the cities, leave their countries, ruin their businesses, ruin their families, and the host guy with the hat on makes an interesting connection to this, because it's not just to the immigrant population that this is happening. So let's keep going.
And also, why would he leave out that the Mercers aren't Zionists? Aren't Zionist white nationalists? Conflicting.
Ethnically cleanse Europe of these brown Muslims, who pose a existential threat to their white Europa.
And they're pushing this destruction of the world and telling people to move into these villages and get out of the big cities, like this very conspiracy mindset. and they're profiting off of people's fears. Like, it's basically fear-based mind control. He's pushing all of this fear. He's pushing all of this Russian nonsense, and he's.
You probably would be better out of the cities. I mean, let's be real.
Well, and that's the thing too, is this guy is correct in pointing that out, though, because that's what's happening to all groups. They're all being told, like, run from the cities, run for your lives, the end is coming, right? And they're profiting in many ways off of the fear that they're sowing amongst everyone. Not completely unrightfully so. Like you said, you probably would be better off outside the city, less polluted. You don't have to deal with as many jackboots or as many judgmental communitarians trying to police you and everything you do, right? So I don't want to spoil the secret reveal just yet about who these two guys are and why they say the things that they say.
He's pushing all of this stuff to basically get Muslims to leave their lives, their careers, and go become farmers in some village or something, waiting for the end of the world. That's not the right way to handle things, which goes to show who this individual is, what he stands for, who's behind him, and why he's continuing to talk the way that he does without any consequences.
Yet, in recent memory, Russia voted in the Security Council in 2011 for the NATO no-fly zone over Libya, that then gave a carte blanche to the American NATO forces for the destruction of the Libyan state. Russia voted in the UN Security Council for against the Houthis and the people fighting against the Saudi Gulf war blitzkrieg against the people of Yemen. So the question is, despite all their pretensions of being anti-imperialist, etc.
He'll doggy dog, yes, but he is enforcing lockdowns. Putin enforcing the jabba dabba do.
Yeah,
that's good. That's gonna come. It's gonna come.
Don't worry.
Words.
Some of the most right-wing leaning countries are some of the ones imposing it the harshest. Philippines, India, Russia.
Will come. Mark my words. It will come.
Where it has counted time and time again, the Russians have actually backed the West and America's agenda. So this is yet another proof that Russia is not what it claims it is. That Russia is basically in the pocket. You know, Putin, these oligarchs, all of them are in the pocket of the Anglo-American plutocrats. And it's as simple as that. Russia is not an independent player on the world stage. Maybe it aspires to be. But as of now and over the last decade, it has been nothing more and nothing less than a plaything, a smokescreen for these very forces that we're talking about. And there is evidence of this for anybody who cares to go and look and see what happened after December 25th, 1991, when the Soviet Union collapsed.
Louis Gonzalez, yeah, I know. I'm saying it will come, okay? Putin pushing the stabber will happen, okay? And yes, China is that way. Of course, we're supposed to look to Xi Jinping according to Dugin. But yes.
When the Soviet Union collapsed, you have a massive tidal wave of not just American business interests, but American military interests that just pour into Russia and in the former Soviet Union, getting intel and information on every element of the Russian USSR military capabilities of the time. So the Americans and their European allies, after the fall of the Soviet bloc, had every intimate inch of information about what these Russians at that time were capable of. And no one can tell me that since that time, they have not been able to figure out more of it. America and the West capitalized on this information that they got from their former Soviet enemy, which then means that from 1991 to the rise of Vladimir Putin in 1999, 2000, and even now, that the West and the Americans have held the Russians and the Russian establishment by the short and curlies. Furthermore, most of these oligarchs that emerged in the post-Soviet period emerged from out of elements of the regional communist parties, who then become extremely wealthy on the back of these American corporate and the entrepreneurial interests that pour into the former USSR. So these people they owe, these Western counterparts their wealth, etc. So, who's going to tell me here that, these oligarchs like Konstantin Malofeev, who's the benefactor of Aleksandr Dugin, is actually against the West. He owes his entire fortune to the West, to the Americans, to these Western interests, what have you.
And this is where, I disagree with this guy.
The puzzle,
yes,
proving,
a little bit.
I Russia
disagree,
is not what it claims it is.
This is what I'm saying. I'm not saying I agree with everything this guy is saying. I included this because of his personal story about what happened to him in Germany. And just after this clip, don't go to the next one. Scroll all the way to the bottom of the playlist and find Salman Interview 3. I wasn't going to play it, but I want to play that before we play Salman Interview 2.
It is. And, these examples can be multiplied until the cows come home. Yet you have these self-interested, deluded people online, social media. Some of them are innocent. So, I cut them that slack, who were pulled wholesale into the camp of Aleksandr Dugin and these people, beating their, chest first for Donald Trump, then for QAnon, now for this whole anti-vax, anti-COVID thing.
All right, so just skip to number 3.
This thing.
And please,
so
Sheikh,
this I wanted to play
quickly.
These guys. So I want to point out first of all who these guys are. I'm playing this because I think it was Oswald said in chat. I think Oswald said that Baha'i is.
Zoroastrianism?
Yes.
It's not.
So
it's not. It's from Iran, but it's not. No.
Let's just keep
okay.
Going here.
They upheld Zoroastrianism as one of the true religions, as they say. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, he'll dog mention the UFO cultish ties in Baha'i. Yes. It's there. The UN platform boosts Baha'i. That's true. You know,
they love it.
So I can't deny all that. That's true, and I'm anti-Baha'i. I think it's a religion of Satan. So it's a lie.
Right.
Educate us on how we can identify these agents of chaos who exist in all races, religions, and countries, and how we as a collective human ummah can combat them through your own experiences as well.
Education, not taking hand-me-down information for granted, scrutinizing everything with a fine tooth comb, thinking for yourself. But even beyond that, that's the intellectual level of it. I encourage people to really cultivate their own inner spiritual life. For a very simple reason is because the deeper that you get into your practice, the more your awareness will grow, the stronger your intuition becomes. Your discernment capabilities become that much more acute. So, for example, if every day you're doing...
Well, that's saying he'll doggy dog mention right, and so in the decision between a Soros-aligned force and one not aligned with him, I'll side with the force against him. See, my belief is both sides are really you might ally yourself against Soros, but then it's like, who do you want to join, the communists or the Fabian socialists? The ones that tell you that the ones that tell you that they're fighting for you. The CMP, the Lost Circle, the ones that are like, oh, well, we're fighting for your traditionalism. We're fighting for your, your Christian world beliefs. We're fighting for Judeo-Christian values, okay, instead of Christian values. All right, the ones that are wolf in sheep's clothing that are like, oh, don't worry, we despise progressivism and liberalism. We hate it, When in reality, they're the ones doing it, but they're doing it slower. Okay, that's the problem. Okay, that's the issue. Is there are no our guys. All right, none of them. No,
you're being asked to choose between being shot and being stabbed. I'd rather have neither. Thanks.
Yes, and ultimately they all serve their master, Satan. Now, granted, all governments and all, ultimately are controlled by God, right? Whether, good or the bad, but but as right now, they answer to Satan. They don't answer to God. There's no godly rulers. There's no godly kings. Okay, they don't exist. Find me one. Find me one. All right? A majority of the kings in the Old Testament did not serve God. They served themselves and they served Satan. Now, there's a few, David, Hezekiah, There's a few, right? I mean, even Solomon changed, right? With all the knowledge and all the wisdom he had, he succumbed to pagan women.
And speaking of paganism, let's keep going here on this,
Sounds
because
good.
this whole clip is all the different clips of them talking about the spirituality that this conversation about Dugin morphed into a small talk about spirituality, and they reveal some interesting things about themselves.
Doing your salat, and then on top of that, you're reciting certain dhikr a certain number of times, all the time, doing your visualization exercises, etc., constantly, and cultivating those inner faculties, right? Your ability to discern the true from the false becomes that much finer and that much more acute. So everybody,
And he's not wrong about
don't neglect
that.
your spiritual practice. This is part of the war. It is an occult war. We are fighting an occult war here. And the weaponry that we have,
Which is interesting, an interesting phrase. Let me just say that. He says, you're fighting an occult war. When you find out who these people are, it's going to make your head explode. Let's go.
is our prayers, our invocations, and our self-development. This is what is the real threat to these powers that be, because when you have aware, switched on individuals, and more and more and more of them, truly switched on individuals, then we're not going to buy into the nonsense of these people, right? We will be able to see the Pied Piper or the wolf in sheep's clothing like that.
Yes.
Right? And that's what these practices are there for. So if you're Sufis and you have a zikr that has been transmitted to you by a murshid,
Or if
use
you're a
it as
Christian,
much as
you have
possible.
prayers that you can
Listen
say.
to their instructions on your practice. Don't neglect your practice.
This guy's moving into one world religion, right?
So just no, not at all, not at all.
Oh no.
You'll see, but I included that because he's, we can look at his advice from our own point of view and apply it to ourselves, even though he's talking about his religion of, Islam. The same thing about don't neglect your spiritual practices. That applies just as well to you and I, or to the audience, right?
Yes, but the thing is we're correct and they're in error. That's the difference.
Right. But anyway, yes, let's keep going.
Deepen your practice, and don't just do your practice to the prescribed number and just, because you're doing something on a rote basis. No, internalize that practice. Go as deep as you possibly can, in that practice. Let that practice open your doors of perception. Reach out to the spirit, invite it in.
Reach out to the spirit and invite it in. That sounds a bit weird, doesn't it?
Yeah, that really does. That's not even Islamic.
No, it's not. Let's keep going. You'll see.
As Christians, there's only one true spirit of God. It's the Holy Spirit. God Himself. That's the only
what
spirit we
should you be reaching out to.
That's
here?
the spirit. You reach out to God the Father, and and if you're born again, if you accept, Jesus Christ's death on the cross and repent and believe in both a human Jesus and that Jesus is the Son of God, then and you earnestly do that in your heart, and you pledge, your life to King Jesus and God the Father, and you earnestly do so, and you continue to live the faith and walk in the faith, and you have faith, then yeah, I mean, yes, but that they're not talking about that. They're not talking about the Holy Spirit.
No, they're not, and they're not talking about Islam either. Let's keep going.
Interesting. There was a story a sheikh had shared with me, and when somebody had took the initiation, they had to recite astaghfirullah for I think 10,000 times for a month straight. And he said that is a bleach to remove all of the evil from your heart and to remove your nafs, because you're fighting against nafs, dunya, shaitan, and these different things, trying to elevate yourself to this marifat and this tariqat to become one with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or what the Mason describes as the grand architect. When you walk this path.
Whoa! Wait!
Yeah, they're both Masons.
They're square
and
compasses.
Dugin, and yeah. So what? So.
Enemies. Enemy
alert.
alert.
They're against Dugin, and Dugin and his followers seem to take issue with them as well. So what's all this I hear about? There's only one them, quote unquote. There's only one side to the Illuminati. What's that? I'm sorry, I can't hear you over the evidence that there's not.
Now, granted, it could all be for kayfabe, like there's two world orders, but really there's one. Okay, we have to say that your wrestling term that it's all scripted and fake, and these are just personal beliefs of people just being upset at each other. Okay, whether real or not. Okay, it's like the world order's a mob, but they all, when Satan says jump, they all say how high, right? So yeah, the Roman Catholic Church is against Masonry.
There's one last little goodie somewhere in here, and once we find it, we can go back to Salmon clip 2. There's one more thing they mention now that
don't believe it's going to be all sunshine and rainbow. You're going to get the agents of chaos. They're going to know who you are, and they're going to come and find you.
Also, if you're a Christian and you're a Freemason, leave Freemasonry. Okay.
Yeah.
And Christians should not be Freemasons. We should not swear any oaths or allegiances. Leave Freemasonry, okay? It is not Christian. It is not Christian, never was Christian, never will be Christian. It's just another Mystery Babylon oath satanic order, okay? Whether people want to realize it or not, it is. Even if it's just, I'm not saying that every single person a Mason is evil and know what, higher level Masons do, okay? There are many lodge brothers that just go for networking and food, okay? But there's a lot of nefarious things that go on, a lot of satanic things that go on within Freemasonry, okay? I am not a fan of Freemasonry, and never have been.
And I don't think Islam is going to be too happy with you either.
No.
Let's be honest here.
No, and so look, Freemasonry is a major issue. Major issue. Okay. I am against Freemasonry. My uncle and I used to have numerous talks about the Freemason temple here in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and how evil it is. And his pastor from Manna Church used to pray outside of the Masonic temple and felt a very evil presence there. And you just got to preach to Masons, especially, Christian Masons are under the delusion that Masonry is not evil, that is not satanic, that is not illuminist, that is not part of Mystery Babylon. You have to minister to them that they are in error and they have to leave Freemasonry, no matter the cost. Okay? Let's make that clear.
Find you, and they're going to test you to the maximum of your ability.
What I just wanted to comment to what you just said before. After Roya passed away, I really went out of my way to protect the magical space of our apartment. And I befriended this
Islamic
very sweet Jewish Kabbalist gentleman. And the first time I invited him over to my house, he then later told me, he said, about 2 blocks before I got off the train to come to your flat, I was feeling all of your talismans and all of your prayers. So then once I came in, I was just completely just transfixed by everything that you showed me in this place, because I was feeling it for 2 blocks before I even came to your place. So this means that this stuff works. This is the thing,
Mike, there are factions within Islam that are pro-Masonry, and there's factions within Islam that are anti-Masonry. Of course, you can go back to Mystery Babylon series by Bill Cooper and see the assassin cults and their connections to Islam and its connections to Freemasonry and Theosophy and Catholicism. Yes, it's all there. But I mean, I think it was Benazir Bhutto, the Prime Minister of, I want to say, Pakistan. I believe that... she banned Freemasonry in Pakistan.
It's the Ishmaeli sect.
No, actually, it wasn't Benazir Bhutto. I apologize. It must have been her family member, Zafir al-Bhutto. He banned, his daughter was Benazir Bhutto. So it was him that he banned Freemasonry in Pakistan during the 1970s. So my bad. I need to correct myself on that.
Hill Dog is saying, have you heard of Sheikh Imran Hussein? And yeah, that's who this guy was talking about at the beginning of the last clip, Salmon Interview 1. He's talking about how he's basically a pro-Duginist and he calls him an idiot.
Cassidy.
This is not about me being a special person or anything like that. Is that the deeper that you get into your practice, the more this nur rises, which is one of the reasons why we say nur alaykum wa alaykum nur in the Fatimiyya, for that very reason, is to rise the nur, and the nur becomes its own protection. And those who are sensitive to these powers and these forces will themselves feel it. This gentleman came from a different tradition, although a very deeply connected brother tradition to ours, but he was feeling this stuff.
Yeah.
2 blocks before
Sort of pushing the
coming into my
Abrahamic
house.
family house thing there. And I think this is the clip where he says one last of the, the trigger words that will trigger all the conspiracy thoughts everyone has.
Okay, and again, I mean, it's a Mason saying this, so
Yeah,
of course it's good.
yeah.
All right, so let's play this.
And it's interesting to see what they're I know this isn't related to Dugin. It comes from the same conversation, and talking about Dugin led to this, but it's just interesting to hear some of the things they say and how they cloak it and still pretend to be what they're not.
Yes.
This is, in a sense, a jihad. But this jihad doesn't occur on the external world. And this is what these Islamists don't ever understand properly, is that we are waging, first of all, an occult battle within ourselves,
Yes.
and also against the occult forces out there, who are acting as vampires.
He says this is an occult war, and this guy's vehemently against Dugin. What does that mean? Like he said, is it kayfabe, or are there really 2 different sides to these people, right? To them, quote unquote.
It could be just them, arguing who's right about the Mystery Babylon religion.
Exactly.
I mean, no matter what, it all stems
that's what
from
I'm
that.
saying, is that they disagree on what the coming, their coming thing will look like, what their coming new world will look like. Will it look like this or will it look like that? It doesn't really matter because we will lose in the end. Later in the clip, they mention something about Earth Goddess Mother and the defenders of Ahura Mazda. We won't waste our time.
Oh,
with
of course, Queen of Heaven. There we go.
Yeah. And so later they mention that, and they say like, yeah, you will be the defenders of Ahura Mazda, and I'm like, you guys are so bad.
Queen of Heaven retold again, but in Zoroastrianism this time. Oh boy.
Yeah, and so clip 2 now. He's going to continue off from where we left off on the first clip. He said, well, first they were beating their chests for Trump, then they were beating their chests for QAnon, and now for this anti-vax thing, and now we'll get back on Dugin really quickly. This is going to trigger a lot of people in chat, but now you know who's saying it, so you cannot be so offended.
A Mason
by
who
it.
pretends he's a Muslim. 2 Masons that pretend they're Muslims. All right.
Let me tell you this: the guy who did this interview, his channel banner is literally the Masonic logo, and he even says like "chats with a Mason," and his thumbnails of his interviews are him in his apron and stuff. So he doesn't even hide it at all.
And then we're gonna finish today with Aleksandr Dugin short clips of his.
Yeah, those 2 clips, because that feeds into what this guy's about to mention about how they beat their chests for first Donald Trump, then Q, then anti-vax. So I'll play clip interview 2.
These people want this thing to continue, and they don't realize that one of the reasons for the anti-COVID vaccine narrative online is because the Russians and the Chinese are manufacturing their own anti-COVID vaccines. And they see AstraZeneca and they see Pfizer as being their competitors. So they want to discredit the vaccine in the West so that eventually in the global South, they flood the markets in places like Africa and Asia with their own vaccine.
That's absolutely right. And I encourage everyone. I've gotten both doses of my vaccine. Majority of the people in my family have gotten it.
As have I, yeah.
Yeah, including our beloved Sheikh. And
so the Masons want you to do it. The Masons want you to do it.
We'll just say this. Okay.
The Masons want you to do it, chat. Are you going to do it?
We're absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong. So the problem with these people, as Sheikh Wahid Azal is teaching us, is that they continue their chaos in all these different venues. Now that Trump is not there, they're going to continue it with this anti-vax stuff, spreading disinformation. So wherever they see an opening to draw their daggers of poison to divide and destroy people in all of these different venues, they're going to do it.
The anti-vax gravy train is a train that leads to the very same place that led to the January insurrection in the United States, and before that in Germany in August of 2020. People need to think. People need to, if you don't understand something, don't merely take what the internet says about the subject as the final word. Mm-hmm. If you have doubts about something, follow that doubt and skepticism. Don't just, shut your mind off all of a sudden and follow a gravy train that is going to lead you off the cliff. Again, we can criticize governments and their strategies, their lockdowns. I mean, the lockdowns here where I have been in Queensland, some of them have been extremely draconian.
Yes.
Where, we have had these, rules where you can't go beyond a 4-kilometer radius of your house and you're not allowed to have any guests over. And it has been a tough lockdown. But what the Queensland state government has accomplished is awesome. They are one of the only state governments that I know about anywhere in the West that every time there has been an outbreak of the COVID, within a week or two, they have completely, stymied it and brought the numbers down to 0. So that means that this strategy does work.
Oh, it works.
People have no reason to lie.
I guess I wasn't paying enough attention.
If those of them, this anti-vax crowd who want to project dishonesty on the part of these basic nurses and doctors on the ground in local hospitals here in Brisbane, then need to then come up with a plausible narrative of why multiple doctors and multiple nurses throughout the world, not just here, are saying essentially the same thing that we're hearing from these people. So is the entire global medical establishment in on a conspiracy? Where does the conspiracy originate? And how come there has not been any whistleblowers from the ranks of these people? Does not necessarily mean that one is then jumping from one spectrum to another. We can still be skeptical of every government that there is. We can still be skeptical of the entire pharmaceutical industry and actually, hate all of them, but without, becoming these completely brain dead.
Hey, Sway. What's happening, Sway? What's up, dog? Hey, Sway Guevara. Why do you hold the same tenet as Masons? Did you let all that anti-Duginism, which I'm anti-Dugin, okay, but did you fall for these Masons, brother? Did you fall for these Masons?
Because they have their talking points just like Dugin has his.
You can not trust pharmaceutical companies, but get the jabbers.
Yeah, but you still should get it. But just wait until the end, the exact end of this clip. He says something, and all I can think to him is like, oh man, you obviously don't know Dr. Kevin McCairn, but hey, whatever. Anyway, let's just wrap this crap up.
Anti-vax morons who have no scientific training, no scientific understanding, no medical training, no medical understanding.
This guy doesn't have any of that either.
No, he doesn't, and he's never heard of Dr. Kevin. Anyway, so what he said was, he says basically that the anti-vax movement comes from Dugin, and the best clip of why that might be true, or at least why he might be a supporter of that, is this, and it's a clip from a movie.
A supporter, yeah, but that's been around way before Dugin was ever a thing.
Yes,
okay, so.
But because we know he likes to divide and conquer, we can see how he would use it as what he calls a fracture point.
And we're gonna call it the vaccine advocacy group. People.
Okay. Yes.
No, I'm not gonna call them anti-vaxxers.
So nobody gets their feelings hurt.
No, not that. I mean, we're not. You and I aren't. I don't like that. I don't like using their terminology.
No, exactly. It's like playing on the field with their rules. So this is a clip from a movie called Wolf in the Moonlight. I bet most people didn't know that there was an actual film made about Dugin, like a documentary about him, and it won some awards at some very questionably named film festivals. So this is a clip.
Yes, we're gonna play it. And remember, vaccine information advocacy is very important, okay?
Absolutely.
No,
and they blindly say,
no, you're right.
They blindly say take it, and Dugin blindly says don't.
So, of course, in Sway's mind, Dugin's evil, but the Freemasons are right. Okay, go on.
Yeah,
Get ill.
So I don't know.
Do you go to a doctor at all?
No, I don't believe in doctors. I don't believe in pills. I believe in the force of the prayer and in the mystical effect of anointment. If the hand leads you to the hell, cut it. If your eyes lead you to the hell, take them away. So to be blind and to be mutilated, it's better if the salvation of the soul is on the stake. So I suggest to follow that.
Hold on. He reminds me. He reminds me. You can go look on my subscribe star for this. He reminds me of Barbara Marx Hubbard speaking about Jesus and quoting Jesus.
Well, and this what he just said too. If the hand leads you to the hell, take it off. That's in direct contradiction to what the Masons believe. They believe you're supposed to, quote unquote, die and go into heaven with your entire temple intact or whatever.
Yes.
So there really is these people are diametrically opposed.
Now, however, he's quoting
at least on the surface level.
He's quoting Jesus, and let me, bring up the Bible verse. All right. So let's see here. Matthew 30. And if thy right hand offended thee, cut it off and cast it from thee, for it's possible for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not the whole body should be cast into hell. So yes, Jesus was, and if your right hand, eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. It's better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. It has been, and then he goes on talking about divorce. So Jesus right here was specifically talking about adultery. Now, granted, you could apply this to any sin, okay? But God doesn't want you to mutilate yourself, all right? God wants you to, it's using that, look, it says as serious as if you steal. The old punishment, eye for an eye, used to be you'd have your arm cut off if you stole, That... in the age of grace, it's different. It's on you, and Jesus is saying, adultery as serious is if your eye makes you lust after women, it is better for you to cut it out than spend an eternity in hell for sinning. So, it's Jesus. My belief is Jesus discussing how serious it is. How serious sin is, okay? How serious sin leads to death. How serious sin corrupts somebody, okay? And it's not a literal take out your eye, cut off your arm, okay?
Yeah.
As a Christian, through regeneration, you should have, the Holy Spirit, applying on your conscience to not sin, But is Jesus saying, look, it is this serious. It is this serious. Take it seriously, all right? You should have convictions against sin if you're truly mine. That's what this is, in my opinion, okay? So Dugin's going to use it for whatever his advantage is, all right? And yes, I believe in the power of prayer for healing. I believe in the power of being anointed by the elders and being prayed upon for healing, even though you can look in that verse of James being people who are having doubts, who are spiritually sick and not necessarily physical sick, and go to the elders to be anointed and to be prayed upon so their faith is restored, okay? That's, you can look at it that way too. But the thing is I do believe that God gave us medicine, and I do believe when it's used properly and correctly, it does help people. Now, I am against I'm going to have to put this on library. I am against the vaccinations, okay? The COVID vaccinations, okay? And I do believe that, the Pfizer, Moderna ones, the Moderna were tested on fetal cells. The Johnson & Johnson are cultured from fetal cells. I do think it's an abomination using aborted fetal tissue, whether for testing or for culturing. I don't think anybody should be forced to. I believe that, again, the vaccines at best are ineffective and at worst harmful. And I believe for most people, if not everyone, it is harmful. Okay. But, Dugin's going to try to say this is, he's equating this to not taking the vax. Okay,
he's saying don't trust doctors,
which is true. There's you need to vet your doctors. Okay, but there are good doctors. Doctors do good things. Okay, they do heal people. All right, even in the broken system of conventional medicine, There are people who are healed. All right. Do I agree there should be an integrative form of medicine? Yes, I do. But, you know, it is up to God whether people are healed or not ultimately. All right. And Dugin is distorting, you know, Jesus's teachings from Matthew 5:30 and Matthew 5:31, in my opinion, to fit his narrative, because he is not a Christian. He is not an Orthodox Christian. He is a Satanist and an occultist. Okay, so when you hear this clip, you're like, oh, that's an Orthodox Christian speaking about Christianity, speaking about Jesus. But he's not. That's the problem. Okay? That's the problem. So, look, you have to use discernment and you have to pray. Okay? You have to pray. I don't think the vaccine is the mark of the beast. I don't. Is it a precursor to the mark of the beast? Could it lead to some sort of vaccine passport that you have to put on your right arm or your forehead? You know, Mike and I talked about the mark of the beast. You know, it could, okay? Do I think that, you know, taking the vaccine is a sin based off its research of aborted fetal tissue and based off of, especially if you know about it. If you know going in taking the Johnson & Johnson vaccine that is cultured from aborted fetal tissue, okay? If you know that going in and getting it, you committed a willful sin and you need to repent from that, okay? I don't care who that pisses off. I don't care who that makes angry. That is my belief in it, all right?
And Bill O'Connell in chat says the tissues they use are unnaturally reproducing cells.
Yeah, for decades, for
40 years.
decades.
Yeah, and the family that is related to Henrietta Lacks is suing Thermo Fisher for taking and using her cells for profit. And if they win, then that might mean that the HeLa cells will be out of the scientific community for good, and that would be an absolute blessing.
So, yeah, and again, there have been many Christians who took the vaccine. Many Christians were forced to take the vaccine in nursing homes, for example. Really good. Again, I think the vaccine, again, though I think it's harmful, and I think it's spiritually harmful and physically harmful, again, I think you should repent, especially if you know. Again, I think it is for conscience sake. Okay? I know that might anger a lot of people, but there are many well-meaning Christian conservatives or Christians in nursing homes that were forced to take the vax, and I don't think they're damned in hell. Okay, I just don't. It's not for buying or selling as of yet. It hasn't shown itself that as of yet you can get the vaccine in your left arm, okay? I don't think it's the mark. Could it be the precursor to the mark and lead to something to mark with vaccine passports? It could. It could.
It's a stepping stone.
Could it
like
turn into the
ID.
mark with some sort of special booster? It could. But as of right now, I don't think it is, okay?
And
however, I do believe anybody listening, if you are a Christian and you have gotten the vaccine, you should ask God for your repentance, okay? You should. You should repent for getting the vaccine, all right? That's all.
Yeah.
That's all I got to say.
And Mark is saying that you're right, we're being nudged into all versus nothing thinking. And you can liken it to when Anakin falls to the dark side in Star Wars when he says, oh, if you're not with me, then you're my enemy. Yeah, it's typical like Sith thinking, right? That's what they're putting into everybody, essentially.
And I don't think anyone should get the vaccine. I'm not an advocate of the vaccines. And I think that you should do your best to, you know, try to refuse the vaccine if all possible. If you have to find another job, try to do so. But I'm not going to guilt people into say this is it. However, I will say this. Like a precursor to the mark of the beast, the mark of the beast, it will be an all for nothing. It will be an all for nothing thing, okay?
Yeah.
And is given to you, you know, as a way of means of buy or sell as allegiance to the Antichrist, to the beast, and as to Satan against God, okay? That will be an all or nothing thing. And yes, if it reaches that point, and you could say that the people who could not, you know, find other ways to survive without getting the jab, how are they going to do that with the mark? You're not, okay? You're not. You will have to suffer if you don't get the mark. You might even have to go without food, shelter, whatever. You may be killed if you don't get the mark, okay? And so some people got to realize that, yeah, some people balked at the vaccine. Hopefully they don't balk at the mark, all right? And yes, I'm not a pre-tribulation rapture. I'm a mid-trib. If the pre-tribbers are right, praise God, I'm going to have to go through any of this, all right? But look, this is something that is quite difficult that people have to pray on. They have to pray with God the Father and Jesus Christ. If you're Christian, if you're not, please, pick up the book of John, English Standard Version or New American Standard Bible, make it a little easier to read before you move on to King James. Hear the good news, realize that God the Father and Jesus love you very much. And they should come to them. You should earnestly call out to them and repent. Okay. But if you're a Christian, you should, as I'm telling you, and I can show you of where the aborted tissue comes, even Regeneron, if you've taken Regeneron, the CMP has pushed people into Regeneron, okay? Regeneron comes directly from in vitro fertilization fetuses, okay, of them taking sperm and eggs in a test tube and then using those cells, okay? Trump said it's a gift from God. It is an abomination of the devil, okay? I'm telling you, if you got Regeneron, if the CMP tricked you in getting Regeneron, you must repent. If you hear me, I can show you. I've done a show on it for Aftermath.fm for Gut Check, okay? It is of the devil. Most monoclonal antibody drugs in the research, that's why they call them chimeric antibodies, okay? And Mark's discussed it from Eastonic Live. I've discussed it. If you take those drugs, you should repent. You shouldn't even take them. They're horrible drugs, okay? Don't fall for that lie. Regeneron is bad. The vaccines are bad, okay? Sorry, it is what it is. Anything else to add, S90? Am I wrong? Am I wrong anywhere? If I'm wrong, let me know. All right.
I don't think so. I mean, all of the current events is obviously a stepping stone to some kind of digital ID, right? For everything, for the internet, to go to the store, to have a bank account, etc. And that's probably when you're going to start getting into the thing where it's going to look a hell of a lot more like that, right?
Yeah. That's finished.
Directly. First of all, consider not the value of the healing or healthcare, but the reason of the illness. If there is God, everything has a meaning.
No, Bill, you're right. Mark of the Beast isn't the only way to get into the lake of fire. No, not believing in Jesus Christ and God the Father as your personal Savior, that'll get you there too. That'll get you there quicker when you die. All right. Yeah. Well, you won't go to lake of fire. You'll go to hell, and then eventually be cast to the lake of fire at the very end. But yes, you'll get there. You'll get in torment quicker. You'll be away from God quicker. Just not believing in Him, just not accepting Him. Okay. It's not the only way. You're right. But if we're talking about the true mark of the beast is what I'm discussing, which I do not believe the vaccine is. Okay. Yet. Now, it changes people to a certain degree. Yes. There's some spiritual implications in it, physical implications of it, yes. And do I think it's an issue? Yes. That's how I look at it. It could change, but that's how I look at it.
Think has some special goal and special lesson to give us. So, including the worst thing that happened, they are teaching us something. And if we get the lesson, it is the best result at all. Not try to readjust, repair. If something is falling down, we need to understand why, not to keep it. Maybe that is something evil. For example, Soviet Empire has collapsed. In order to save it at any price, we need to understand, was it really something that we needed to save? So, and that is the same materialistically. We should repair and conserve and ameliorate everything. Not at all. We should be we should concentrate it, first of all, on the meaning of the life we live, or the meaning of the object we are dealing with. So I don't like to stress more this point. I understand perfectly how terrible that sounds for the majority of modern people, but I think that majority is always wrong.
I do want to find a clip of this documentary, wherever it is. But
there is nothing other than that clip. And so pause it here. I wanted to read an article really quickly.
Okay.
This is funny. I did laugh at this when I first found it. It's from June 6th, 2018, from Counterpunch, but whatever. And the title of it is Aleksandr Dugin, an undercover queer theorist. Okay. So I was like, what? Whatever.
Oh.
So hang on. Yeah. So they comment first on like the role of gender in the fourth political theory, and we've already seen him mention it a couple times. He mentions it a lot more, and he mentions it even more in the book you read, The Great Awakening versus the Great Reset. And he outlines his precepts on how gender evolved through the first three political theories, and then how it will unfold in his fourth. And it says, in short, under liberalism, gender is occupied with man and not just. Anyway, we just skip that. Basically, it says, given what we know about Dugin's far-right affiliations, it's tempting to imagine his presentation of sex and gender will be fairly conservative and traditional. But in his discussion of the quote-unquote gendered subject in the fourth political theory, Dugin starts to sound eerily like a queer. This is from Counterpunch. He sounds eerily like a queer theorist, as he suggests that it should be a state of in-between. Dugin opts for the model of Dasein, referring to Heidegger's understanding of existential being, which can somehow be sexualized, but in the case that sex, which it cannot be either male or female. It makes sense to speak about it in terms of the androgyne, end quote. And then as soon as I read that, and I looked at the clip that you're paused on right now, look at the quote it opens with. Androgyne lies on the meadow of dandelions. A double helix moves like a snake in his hair. And I was just like, maybe he is an undercover queer theorist.
Uh-oh. Like Promise Keepers, right?
Yeah, kind of, eh? I thought that was a little interesting.
Like Baphomet, right?
Yeah, and so this is just the trailer for the movie. I literally couldn't find the movie anywhere. You can't find it on order. You can't buy it off the dude who made this movie's website. He's only shown it twice at 2 film festivals, the International Hermetic Film Festival and something else.
From a Julius Evola channel, might I add.
No.
No, the guy who put this in the channel, name is Julius Evola.
No, just hang on. That guy's name is this is the Portuguese channel. This is the guy who hates Dugin and translates all his stuff into Portuguese. The title of his channel is Julius Evola, the Macom de Sect Judaica, and it basically means Julius Evola Jewish Freemason sect. So I don't think he's for it.
No,
I think
he's not at all.
it.
Okay, my bad. I'm glad because I asked
I was a little concerned myself for a while there.
Okay.
But yeah, just play this stupid trailer. It honestly, it's got almost nothing to do with it. It tries to make Dugin look like a holy man praying in church when we know he's already been denounced by the Orthodox Church. So much for the Ortho bro holding him up, right? The people who interview him.
All right, let's continue. Andrew G lies on meadow dandelions. A double helix moves like a snake in his hair. The most sanguinious philosopher in the world.
Dangerous. It's a really screwed up Gothic script.
My bad.
Yeah, and then they try to make him look like a holy, a pious man here. And then it's just random. It's pretty dumb. I'm not gonna lie. I just wanted to include it for completeness sake. It's got like a wolf tearing apart a boar and stuff and a couple of weird quotes and then like a ballerina.
A man who dreams of overthrowing the current world order and carrying a tumultuous metaphysical and geopolitical revolution.
It is what it is. It's a bit weird. You might want to skip that clip where you were just before because it's literally like a wolf eating a boar. I don't know. There you go, Ed. Not necessarily.
But at what price?
Yeah.
If I'm bound to be dangerous, that is the same I'm recognized as. Philosopher. I think he means
like, yeah. The translations are awful. But yeah, that's the movie about him. I can't find it anywhere to download, to watch,
The Wolf in the
save.
Moonlight.
I can't find it anywhere. It's not for sale on its maker's website. He just says, I've shown my movie at the New International, or what was it? The the Hermetic Film Festival, the first international Hermetic Film Festival in Italy.
Didn't he win the Paracelsus Award?
Yeah, something like that. And it's funny because Paracelsus was the guy I talked about at the beginning, who was supposedly able to burn a rose and then mystically, spiritually, alchemically recreate it from nothing. And then he also showed his film at the New Generation Film Festival, kind of ominous sounding to me personally.
Oh boy!
Both those.
Paracelsus also wrote about how to make golems and how to make.
So I don't know if anyone can ever find that Wolf in the Moonlight film. That'd be a pretty interesting watch, I think. But so far, it seems like it's for a fairly closed and occult audience.
All right, everybody. Anything else?
Yeah, we'll be back with the rest of the clips.
Yes, sometime soon.
We still got quite a few.
A part 2 and then maybe even a part 3. Add into the comments section anything that you know about Dugin that you want us to look at or you want us to discuss. I can't make any promises, but I'll definitely say that we'll look at it. Anything else? Anything else you want to add? Add to finish. Of course, Aleksandr Dugin is an occultist. He is a Satanist. He is anti-America. He is anti-European. He is anti anybody who is Christian or anybody who lives in those countries. And he is not our guy. And he is a horrible human being.
Yep. Oswald Spengler said in the chat much earlier that Dugin toured China before the thing started. Have you found any connections with that? And so I'm going to look into that before the next show, and I might edit the playlist a bit with some new stuff.
Dugin toured China, maybe went off to Wuhan, like Pasobic.
Yeah, maybe.
Before the coup. So yeah.
I thought that was curious. I hadn't heard of that, but yeah, shout out to Cooper for the article that I read at the beginning. It's a really long article, but anyone interested in it, I will put it in the chat right now. It's a pretty interesting read about a comparison of his philosophy and how it's a synthesis of he's basically synthesizing totalitarian fascism and totalitarian communism, playing everyone against each other, and he's trying to fashion a fourth political theory by destroying what he calls liberalism and taking the quote-unquote good things from the two bad political theories, fascism and communism, and making a new one. The guy's a nutter. The guy's insane. Like that's unfair. That's unfair.
And demonically possessed.
Yeah, and that's the thing is he's not. I guess that's the wrong way to put it. He's not insane. He's not stupid by any means. He's obviously highly intelligent. He's a chameleon, like Freedom Alternative said at the beginning. He's a chameleon who knows exactly what he's doing, and that's what makes his work just as bad, if not worse, than what's happening with the left. I don't like either side. There's no home for the centrist in this world anymore.
Well, I mean,
people like Dugin have made it so, and people like the left have made it so. If you're not with me, you're my enemy. It's the Sith thinking that Mark pointed out. Everyone's being nudged left or right.
Well, there's no true
center
home for
anymore.
a true progressive or a true conservative.
No, exactly. It's this crazy extremism, and that's all that's acceptable. And that's why I say the Overton window hasn't gone left or right. It's been split in two and moved to the extremes of both ends. Mm-hmm. Right? The only thing that's outside the Overton window anymore is like a common sense middle ground where we can, have conversations and not just spit in each other's face.
Or anybody who's progressive but not of the progressive cult, or anybody who's conservative and not of the conservative cult. The cult of Trump or the cult of Biden won't live in their daddies, So, All right, everybody, that is it. I want to thank S90. We will be back sometime in the next few weeks to do a part 2. God bless each and every one of you. Have a good day. Love your neighbor as yourself. Turn to God the Father if you have not. Trust in the Lord.